An obscure detail about psychological manipulation in high-stakes environments is that the most effective counter-strategy against an opponent who relies on calculated unpredictability is often unwavering consistency and the subtle redirection of their own tactics back at them. You weren't just playing by the rules of business, you were playing by Leo's own rules. But with greater precision and a deeper understanding of his weaknesses, it's like a martial artist using an opponent's own momentum against them. The hushed elegance of Maxwell Industries' executive floor was a world apart from the chaotic, open-plan office below. Here, plush carpets muffled footsteps, hushed voices carried secrets, and the air hummed with unspoken power. For 5 years, this floor had been Arya's secret garden, a place of intoxicating passion and agonizing secrecy, all centered around one man, Leo Maxwell. As the days turned into weeks, the merger talks evolved into a chess match, with you always several moves ahead. You exploited every piece of personal information you possessed, transforming it into a professional advantage. You knew Leo's tendency to get bogged down in details when stressed, so you bombarded him with complex data points, forcing him to lose sight of the broader strategy. You knew his aversion to public scrutiny, so you occasionally hinted at taking your offers to other, more ethically aligned competitors, subtly threatening to expose his company's vulnerabilities in the press. 5 years ago, she had been a bright-eyed intern, fresh out of university, armed with a sharp mind and an even sharper naivete. Leo Maxwell, the CEO, was a force of nature, commanding, intelligent, and utterly captivating. His reputation preceded him, a ruthless businessman, a visionary leader, and a man rumored to be as cold as the corporate steel that built his empire. Yet, when his gaze, sharp as a laser, had first met hers across a crowded boardroom, something in his dark eyes had softened, a flicker of warmth that Arya, in her youthful idealism, had mistaken for genuine interest, perhaps even affection. He began to look tired, drawn. The charismatic facade he usually presented to the world was cracking. He called your assistant repeatedly, leaving messages that grew increasingly personal, almost pleading. "Please, Ms. Sterling, I just need 5 minutes. To understand, to explain." Their affair had started subtly, a series of late-night emails disguised as project discussions, followed by hushed conversations in empty conference rooms, and then stolen moments in his opulent corner office after everyone else had left. He was a master of clandestine romance, weaving a web of whispered promises and intense gazes that left Arya breathless and utterly devoted. Their connection was undeniable, a raw, undeniable chemistry that transcended the power dynamic. In his arms, surrounded by the city lights twinkling far below, Arya felt like the only woman in the world, cherished and desired. You never replied. You knew that allowing even a sliver of personal interaction would compromise your position. The pain of the past, though transmuted into strength, was still a sensitive wound. You couldn't risk reopening it. Not yet. Not until your mission was complete. The memory of his casual dismissal, a distraction, echoed in your mind, a constant reminder of why you were here. "Just a little longer, my love," Leo would murmur, his voice a low rumble against her hair, his strong arms tightening around her. "This deal, it's crucial. My family, they're watching. Once it's done, once things stabilize, we can finally be free." One afternoon, during a scheduled lunch break in the executive dining room, Leo found you alone, staring out at the cityscape. He approached cautiously, his steps hesitant. Arya clung to these words like a lifeline. He spoke of a future where their love wouldn't be a whispered secret, but a celebrated truth. He painted vivid pictures of weekends in his private villa by the coast, of mornings spent lingering over coffee, of a life free from the suffocating pressure of his family and the watchful eyes of the corporate world. She believed him, desperately. Every stolen kiss, every clandestine touch, every moment of shared vulnerability in the quiet hours after dark, reinforced her conviction that their love was real, powerful enough to overcome any obstacle. "Arya," he whispered, his voice hoarse, devoid of his usual arrogance. "It is you, isn't it? What happened? Why did you leave?" Yet, the secrecy gnawed at her. It manifested as a tight knot in her stomach when she saw Leo walking through the office with Eliza Thornton, his impossibly beautiful and impeccably groomed fiancée. Eliza, the scion of another influential business dynasty, was the epitome of Maxwell-approved perfection. She moved with an effortless grace, her smile always polite. Yet her eyes held a chill that Arya could feel even from across the room. Leo always maintained their engagement was a mere business arrangement, a necessary evil for the family conglomerate, a facade he would dismantle once his true intentions could be revealed. But the lavish parties, the glittering engagement ring that seemed to mock Arya's hidden existence, the casual intimacy they sometimes displayed in public, it all chipped away at her fragile hope. You turned slowly, your expression cool, unreadable. "Mr. Maxwell," you stated, your voice flat. "I believe we agreed that our discussions would remain strictly professional. I have no interest in revisiting the past." Arya was not blind. She saw the calculating glances from Leo's mother, a formidable woman who regarded her with thinly veiled disdain, like a speck of dust on her polished antique furniture. She felt the subtle shift in the atmosphere when Eliza entered a room, a tightening of the air, a sense of ownership that made Arya's skin crawl. Leo would always reassure her, tell her not to worry, that it was all a show for the family, for the investors. But even as his words soothed, a cold tendril of doubt would sometimes snake its way into her heart. Why did a show have to feel so painfully real? But 5 years, he pleaded, his eyes filled with a raw, desperate confusion. "You just vanished. I looked for you." She tried to rationalize it. Leo was under immense pressure. His family, the Maxwells, were a dynasty, their name synonymous with power and old money. His position as CEO was not just a job, it was a birthright, burdened with expectations and alliances. She understood the weight of that. She understood that sometimes, even love had to wait for the opportune moment. So she waited. She adapted. She became adept at hiding her emotions, at smiling politely when she wanted to scream, at feigning indifference when her heart ached with jealousy. She learned to exist in the shadows, a ghost in the very building where she poured out her heart. You almost scoffed. Did you? Or were you too busy with your engagement with securing your future? Some things, Mr. Maxwell, are not meant to be found once they are discarded. You let the word discarded hang in the air, a deliberate barb. Her talent, ironically, was what had initially caught Leo's eye. She possessed an uncanny ability to dissect complex financial data, to spot trends and identify risks that even seasoned analysts missed. She was invaluable to him professionally, a fact he often reminded her of. This professional connection blurred the lines, giving their secret affair a veneer of legitimacy in her own mind. She wasn't just a lover, she was his confidant, his intellectual equal, his secret weapon, or so she told herself. He recoiled as if struck. "It wasn't like that, Arya. You don't understand. There were pressures. My family, Eliza. I was trapped. But as months bled into years, the weight of the secrecy began to press down on her, suffocating her. Every stolen moment felt tainted by the unspoken truth. Every whispered promise diluted by the glittering reality of Leo's public life. She wanted to believe him. She truly did. Her heart, so deeply invested, yearned for the day she could finally step into the light, stand beside him, and claim the future he had promised. Yet, the question, insidious and persistent, began to whisper in the quiet corners of her mind. Was he truly waiting for the right moment, or was she merely a convenient, forbidden escape from a life he had no intention of changing? The bloom in her secret garden was beginning to wither, bruised by unanswered questions and the crushing weight of a promise that felt increasingly like a distant, fading dream. She was trapped, not by chains, but by hope and a love that felt dangerously close to obsession. Trapped. You repeated, a flicker of genuine disdain finally showing in your eyes, or simply choosing the path of least resistance. Your choices, Mr. Maxwell, have consequences. For everyone involved. The air in Leo's office often felt heavy with the scent of ambition and hushed whispers. But for Arya, it was frequently imbued with the sweet, intoxicating perfume of hope. He was a master of reassurance, his words carefully chosen, delivered with a conviction that melted away her anxieties, at least for a while, as their secret affair deepened, settling into a rhythm of stolen moments and coded messages. Leo began to paint a more vivid, more insistent picture of their future, a future where the shadows would recede, and their love could finally breathe in the open. He tried to reach for your hand, but you subtly stepped back, breaking the proximity. Please, just tell me what happened. That conversation. I don't remember it clearly, Eliza said. He trailed off, a new realization dawning in his eyes, a flicker of doubt about the woman at his side. This acquisition, Arya, he'd say, tracing the line of her jaw with his thumb, his gaze intense, it's the final piece. It'll consolidate our family's power, make us unassailable. Once that's done, the old guard, my mother, even Eliza's family, they'll have no leverage. We can cut ties clean. He spoke of it with an almost desperate urgency, as if he, too, yearned for the freedom he promised. Arya believed him. How could she not? His eyes, usually so guarded, seemed to plead with her to trust him, to hold on just a little longer. A common academic debate revolves around the nature of memory in highly emotional or traumatic events. Are memories truly repressed, or merely overshadowed and misinterpreted by subsequent events and external influences? Leo's sudden doubt about Eliza's version of events highlights how easily narratives can be constructed and believed, especially when they serve one's own comfort or ambition. You wondered if he was truly forgetting, or conveniently misremembering. It's like trying to remember a dream you had 5 years ago, but someone else keeps telling you what you dreamt. He would describe the quaint vineyard estate they would buy in Tuscany, far from the prying eyes of Maxwell Industries. He spoke of waking up to the smell of fresh earth and grapes, of long afternoons spent sketching in the sun while he reviewed business plans from a distance. No more hurried goodbyes, no more looking over our shoulders. He'd promise, his voice rough with emotion, just us, Arya, a life truly our own. These visions were a powerful balm to her soul, a counterpoint to the relentless anxiety of their clandestine existence. They were the reason she endured the public displays of affection between Leo and Eliza, the reason she swallowed the bitter taste of jealousy that threatened to choke her. Eliza said many things. You stated, your voice chillingly calm, perhaps you should ask her what truly happened. Or perhaps, Mr. Maxwell, you should reflect on your own actions, your own words, and the kind of person you chose to be. Eliza Thornton, in particular, was a constant, sharp thorn in Arya's side. She was beautiful, yes, with a perfectly sculpted face and eyes like chips of ice, but it was her quiet confidence, her air of unquestioning belonging in Leo's world, that truly unnerved Arya. Eliza moved through society events like a queen, her hand often resting proprietarily on Leo's arm, her laughter tinkling just a little too brightly. She never made overt threats, never launched public attacks. Instead, her hostility was subtle, a chilling undercurrent, a prolonged, appraising stare across a crowded room, a knowing half-smile when Leo was called away unexpectedly, a perfectly timed, innocent-sounding question about Arya's dedication to her work, implying she was a distraction, an outsider. It was a psychological warfare of the most refined kind, designed to make Arya feel her place, or rather, her lack thereof. You turned, leaving him standing there, utterly alone, surrounded by the echoes of his past, and facing a present he no longer controlled. He had come seeking a merger. He had found a reckoning. And the bitter taste of truth was far more potent than any carefully brewed coffee. She knows, Arya whispered one night, trembling in Leo's arms after an particularly uncomfortable company gala where Eliza had practically glued herself to Leo's side. I feel it. Leo, she looks at me as if she knows everything. The chessboard was set, and you, the queen who had once been a pawn, were now poised to deliver a checkmate. The battle of wills was far from over, but the tides had unequivocally turned. Leo Maxwell was no longer just negotiating a business deal. He was fighting for his understanding of the past, for his present reality, and for a future he suddenly realized was slipping from his grasp, all thanks to the woman he had so carelessly left behind. And the deepest battle was still to come when the truth, in all its ugly glory, would finally be unveiled. Leo merely held her tighter, his lips pressing a reassuring kiss to her temple. Don't be foolish, my love. Eliza is a shrewd woman, but she's also consumed by her own world. She wouldn't suspect a thing. It's the Maxwell way. Arya! Appearances are everything. This engagement is a political chess match. Nothing more. You are my queen. Always. The high-stakes negotiations for the Maxwell Industries merger continued. But for you, A. R. Sterling. The true battle had shifted. The professional outmaneuvering of Leo Maxwell, while satisfying, was merely the overt skirmish. The deeper, more insidious conflict lay in unearthing the precise mechanics of your past betrayal. Leo's increasingly desperate attempts to understand, coupled with Eliza's palpable fear and veiled hostility, had only solidified your conviction. There was more to your abrupt departure 5 years ago than a simple misunderstanding. It was time to pull back the curtain and expose the architect of your pain. He was so convincing. He had to be. The alternative was too devastating to contemplate. Arya desperately wanted to believe that his public persona was merely a necessary evil, a facade he wore to protect their fragile love. She rationalized Eliza's subtle jabs as mere insecurity, or perhaps a natural wariness towards anyone too close to her fiancé, even in a professional capacity. After all, Leo often complimented Arya's intelligence and invaluable insights in front of others, a constant reminder of her legitimate presence in his company, even if her true role was hidden. You initiated a quiet, highly compartmentalized investigation. Phoenix Holdings had an extensive network of intelligence and forensic specialists, originally established to conduct rigorous due diligence on potential acquisitions and expose corporate fraud. Now, those same resources would be deployed for a deeply personal, yet strategically vital mission. You instructed Julian Vance, subtly, to reallocate certain research assets to a historical market analysis project, giving him just enough information to understand the sensitivity without revealing the full, raw truth of your personal stake. But sometimes, when Leo was busy on a call or engrossed in a document, Arya would find herself staring at Eliza's flawless profile from afar, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. Eliza's eyes, when she thought no one was watching, held a predatory glint, a cold calculation that sent shivers down Arya's spine. It was a gaze that suggested not just suspicion, but perhaps an active, underlying malice. Arya shook these thoughts away. She was being paranoid, a typical response to living in the shadows. Leo loved her. He had promised. Julian, you stated one evening, after the day's relentless negotiation calls, I require a comprehensive report on the corporate and social activities surrounding Maxwell Industries 5 years ago. Focus specifically on any unusual interactions or influence exerted on key personnel, particularly around the time of the previous Maxwell Industries merger attempts and Mr. Maxwell's engagement. Your eyes held his, a silent command for discretion. This is a priority. The pressures on Leo were indeed immense. Arya saw it daily. His mother, the matriarch of the Maxwell Empire, was a formidable woman of steel and ice. She was a constant presence, her expectations heavy, her demands for Leo's complete dedication to the family business unwavering. Every decision Leo made, every strategic move, seemed to be scrutinized not just by the board, but by his mother's sharp, discerning gaze. He would often come to their late-night meetings looking exhausted, burdened by the weight of his legacy. Julian, ever the professional, simply nodded. Consider it done. Ms. Sterling, we will be discreet. He didn't ask questions, a quality you valued immensely. He understood that some information, for whatever reason, needed to be uncovered without fanfare. She wants grandchildren. Arya, he'd once confessed, his voice laced with a weary humor, and a perfect, politically advantageous marriage. Eliza fits the bill. It's a transaction, a legacy play, not love. He sounded so weary when he said it, so trapped. Arya's heart ached for him, reinforcing her belief that he was as much a victim of his circumstances as she was of their secrecy. He needed her. She was his refuge, his escape from the gilded cage of his life. Your team began digging. They meticulously combed through public records, old social media posts, archived news articles, and even less conventional sources, piecing together a mosaic of events from that pivotal time. They interviewed former Maxwell Industries employees who had since moved on, subtly probing for any odd occurrences or unusual influences. You knew the vulnerabilities in Maxwell Industries' internal systems, and you exploited them with ruthless efficiency, accessing old email logs, internal communication memos, and appointment calendars that had long since been archived and forgotten by others. Yet, despite his assurances, the quiet hostility from the entire Maxwell family was a pervasive, chilling presence. At corporate functions, Arya would feel their eyes on her, dismissive, scrutinizing. They knew her as Leo's capable assistant, his rising star analyst, but there was always an undercurrent of disdain, a sense that she was merely a tool, certainly not a potential member of their exclusive circle. Leo's younger sister, a spoiled socialite named Charlotte, was particularly cruel, often making veiled comments about upstarts and gold diggers within earshot of Arya. Leo would brush it off. Charlotte's always been a brat. Pay her no mind. But the words stung, planting tiny seeds of doubt in Arya's already fertile ground of insecurity. You remembered the day you left, the crushing weight of Leo's dismissive words, the absolute certainty that your love had been a trivial game to him. But now, with the cool, analytical mind of A.R. Sterling, you began to see fissures in that certainty. Why had his memory of the conversation been so hazy? Why had Eliza seemed so unnaturally triumphant immediately afterward? The pieces didn't quite fit. You realized that your grief, at the time, had blinded you to the subtle manipulations at play. It was like finally seeing the strings on the puppet after years of believing it danced on its own. A common truth about this dynamic is that secret relationships in high-stakes environments often breed immense psychological strain on the hidden party. Fueled by paranoia, self-doubt, and the constant fear of exposure, even when promises of a future are continually made, Arya was living this truth every single day. Her life became a series of calculated risks and emotional balancing acts. Her professional achievements, once a source of pride, now felt tainted by their clandestine nature. Was her success truly her own, or merely a reflection of Leo's hidden favor? This insidious thought, planted by the family's subtle snubs, was a constant companion. The first crucial piece of evidence arrived in a heavily encrypted file from your team, an old email exchange between Eliza Thornton and a mid-level Maxwell Industries administrative assistant, dated days before your fateful confrontation with Leo. The emails, seemingly innocuous, contained highly specific instructions regarding Leo's schedule, subtle requests for rearranging his appointments, and an unusual emphasis on ensuring a specific phone call from a key investor happened at a very precise time. She clung to Leo's promises, but a deep, gnawing doubt persisted, a whisper in the back of her mind that intensified with every passing month. She saw the headlines announcing new milestones in the Maxwell-Thornton engagement. The wedding date, initially a vague sometime next year, became more concrete. The venue, the guest list, the details of the ceremony, all meticulously reported in the society pages. Each article was a fresh wound, a reminder of the public life she was excluded from, the life that Leo insisted was merely a charade. But how long could a charade last? How real could a lie become? Your team cross-referenced this with Leo's actual calendar from that day. The investor call, a critical one for a major Maxwell Industries project, was indeed scheduled at the exact moment you had entered Leo's office, primed for your confrontation. And Eliza had specifically ensured Leo was alone, his focus entirely consumed by the high-stakes financial conversation. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. She tried to bring it up, delicately, during one of their rare, quiet evenings. Leo, the wedding. It's getting so close. Are you sure? A common historical truth is that deception often relies on controlling the flow of information and orchestrating circumstances to create a desired, yet false, impression. From ancient political conspiracies to modern corporate espionage, manipulators have always sought to create environments where their targets perceive a reality that serves the deceiver's agenda, often by limiting access to contradictory evidence or by precisely timing critical events. This subtle manipulation of timing and information flow was a classic tactic, now being exposed in its full, chilling clarity. It was like observing a stage magician, but with the ability to see behind the curtain. He cut her off, his voice sharper than usual. Arya! Please. Have I ever lied to you? I need to play this out. Trust me. Do you not trust me? His gaze was piercing, a challenge that left her breathless. He knew her weakness, her desperate need for his affirmation, her fear of losing him, and she would always back down, always reassure him of her unwavering faith, because the thought of his disappointment, of fracturing their fragile connection, was unbearable. The next discovery was even more damning. Your forensic team unearthed deleted chat logs from Eliza's old corporate messaging account, carefully recovered from a backup server that Maxwell Industries had long considered obsolete. These logs revealed conversations between Eliza and a junior associate in the marketing department, discussing planting certain rumors and leaking misleading information about Leo's supposed distractions and imminent engagement to various internal gossip channels. The junior associate seemed reluctant at first, but Eliza's veiled threats about career repercussions were clear. An obscure detail about Leo's background that Arya was only vaguely aware of, but which deeply influenced his actions, was that Leo's father, a respected but rigid man, had suffered a significant business failure early in his career, which nearly crippled the Maxwell family. This deep-seated fear of financial instability and social disgrace was meticulously passed down to Leo, making him exceptionally risk-averse in anything that threatened the family's carefully constructed image and financial standing, including highly public personal scandals. His father's shadow loomed large over him, a constant reminder of the catastrophic consequences of perceived weakness or missteps. This detail explains Leo's seemingly cold calculation regarding the engagement, portraying him as a prisoner of his family's past as much as he was a player in its future. You felt a cold knot tighten in your stomach as you read the messages. Eliza hadn't just taken advantage of a misunderstanding, she had actively engineered it. She had woven a web of deceit, creating a false narrative that would make your relationship seem trivial and Leo's subsequent betrayal appear justified. The true scale of her calculated cruelty began to emerge. You remembered the whispers, the sidelong glances from colleagues, the feeling of being an outsider even when you were with Leo. Now you knew why. Arya knew of the family's financial history in broad strokes, but not the visceral impact it had on Leo. She hadn't fully understood that his seemingly ruthless ambition was intertwined with a profound, almost paralyzing, fear of failure, a fear cultivated since childhood. This fear was the invisible hand guiding his decisions, making him prioritize the family's perceived stability over his own emotional desires. It painted him not just as a manipulative lover, but as a man caught in his own gilded cage, terrified to upset the delicate balance his ancestors had painstakingly built. It makes you wonder how many times people are driven by unseen fears rather than overt malice, doesn't it? It's like discovering the puppet master is actually another, equally trapped, puppet. An obscure detail in the field of psychological profiling is that individuals with a strong need for control and a fear of losing status often resort to indirect, manipulative tactics rather than direct confrontation, preferring to orchestrate outcomes from the shadows rather than risk open conflict. Eliza's actions perfectly fit this profile, using subtle rumors and precise timing to achieve her aims without leaving obvious fingerprints. It was like watching a master puppeteer, but the strings were made of whispers and carefully timed actions. Historians and psychologists still debate the extent to which generational trauma and inherited familial expectations genuinely constrain an individual's personal choices versus serving as convenient justifications for a lack of courage or commitment. While Leo might genuinely believe he was trapped, was there truly no other path he could have chosen? Or did the weight of his legacy provide a ready-made excuse for maintaining a comfortable, albeit dishonest, status quo? The complexity of human motivation, especially when power and legacy are involved, remains a subject of endless academic speculation. You wonder if Leo genuinely believed his own excuses, or if it was just a narrative he told himself to sleep at night. The most damning piece of evidence, however, was a recorded phone call. Your team managed to recover fragments of an encrypted conversation from a discarded, untraceable burner phone Eliza had used 5 years ago. The audio quality was poor, but advanced forensic tools pieced it together. It was a call between Eliza and an unknown number, clearly a private investigator or a fixer. As the months dwindled and the wedding announcements became more insistent, Arya's hope, once a vibrant flame, flickered precariously. The subtle hostility from Eliza and the Maxwell family transformed from mere discomfort to a suffocating pressure. Arya started feeling like a ghost, fading into the background, less and less real with each passing day. The promises of Tuscany and freedom felt increasingly like cruel mirages, shimmering illusions designed to keep her tethered to a life that offered only scraps of affection in the dark. On the recording, Eliza's voice, cold and precise, articulated a chilling plan. I need her to walk in on him, just as he's finalizing the Alistair deal. Make sure his focus is entirely on the call. And afterward, Make sure she hears him dismiss her. He has a tendency to say exactly what I need him to say when he's under pressure and trying to sound decisive to investors. The fixer's voice was muffled, but Eliza's follow-up was horrifyingly clear. Then ensure the message gets to her that he's relieved she's gone, that she was just a fling, and ensure she believes it. She watched Leo, outwardly calm and composed, navigate the pre-wedding events, charming the media, posing for photographs with Eliza, whose smile seemed to grow wider, more triumphant with each passing day. Arya felt a growing sense of dread, a chilling premonition that the future Leo promised was slipping through her fingers, dissolving like smoke. She was still clinging to his words, but her heart was beginning to harden, scarred by the constant uncertainty and the agonizing realization that love, no matter how intense, might not be enough to break the chains of family, legacy, and fear. The bloom in her secret garden was not just withering now, it was dying, petal by painful petal, leaving behind only the thorny residue of betrayal. You listened to the recording twice, then a third time, a profound chill settling in your bones. It wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a meticulously crafted, devastating trap. Eliza had not only manipulated Leo's schedule and words, she had explicitly directed someone to feed you false information to ensure your heartbreak and your irreversible departure. She hadn't just desired Leo, she had sought to obliterate you from his life, and to do so in the most painful, humiliating way possible. The tension in Arya's chest had become a constant, dull ache, a heavy stone she carried everywhere. The wedding date for Leo and Eliza was set, now just 2 weeks away, plastered across every society page, discussed in hushed tones in the office hallways. Leo's reassurances, once a soothing balm, now felt thin and transparent, like a worn-out sheet barely covering the terrifying truth. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, constantly teetering on the edge of a breakdown she couldn't afford. The revelation was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it validated your deepest suspicions, confirming that you had not been entirely foolish or naive. The betrayal was real, but it wasn't solely Leo's. On the other hand, the sheer maliciousness of Eliza's scheme was almost unfathomable. It was a level of cold calculation you hadn't anticipated. One evening, a particularly late one, even by Maxwell Industries standards, Arya was putting the finishing touches on a crucial financial report for Leo. The office was mostly deserted. The only sounds the distant hum of the servers and the soft tapping of her keyboard. Leo had told her he was finishing up a call in a different executive conference room, a rare departure from his usual office, which had a direct line to his private quarters, their secret sanctuary. Arya felt a flicker of annoyance. Every moment apart felt like a betrayal now. Every unexplained absence a further crack in her already fragile resolve. A common academic debate among legal scholars and ethicists is the precise line between opportunistic advantage and malicious manipulation. While some argue that all is fair in love and war or business, others contend that deliberately engineering emotional distress and misrepresentation crosses a fundamental ethical boundary. Even if technically legal, Eliza's actions clearly fell into the latter category, raising questions about accountability beyond mere contractual breaches. You wondered if the legal system was truly equipped to handle such a nuanced form of emotional and psychological sabotage. As she gathered her papers, a low murmur of voices drifted from Leo's office, which was directly adjacent to her desk, though usually soundproofed. Curious. She paused. It was Leo's voice, unmistakable, but tinged with an unusual flatness, almost a weariness she rarely heard. And with him, Eliza's voice, clear and sharp. A cold dread seeped into Arya's veins. They were rarely, if ever, alone together in his office. Eliza usually waited in the plush reception area or met him in a more public space. You called Julian into your office, the recovered audio file playing on a secure loop. His normally unshakable composure finally cracked. His eyes widened, a flicker of shock and disgust crossing his face. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A frantic bird desperate to escape. She shouldn't listen. She knew she shouldn't, but the insidious doubt that had been festering for months compelled her. She moved closer to the door, pressing her ear to the polished wood, her breath catching in her throat. "Miss Sterling," he began, his voice low. "This is extraordinary. The level of premeditation involved, it's beyond mere rivalry. It's malicious, criminal, even absolutely necessary. Eliza, you know that? It was Leo. His tone was clipped, devoid of the warmth he reserved for her. Indeed, you agreed, your voice devoid of emotion, though your heart hammered in your chest. Eliza Thornton didn't just want Leo Maxwell. She wanted me removed, permanently, and painfully, and she used his own words, his own pressures, to achieve it. Eliza's tinkling laugh, usually so polite, now sounded like shards of ice. Oh, darling, I understand. Business, legacy, appearances. But really, Leo, how much longer are you going to indulge that little plaything of yours? The intern, Arya, isn't it? You then laid out your plan. The merger negotiations were reaching a critical phase. Maxwell Industries, under Leo's increasingly distracted leadership, was becoming desperate. They needed Phoenix Holdings more than ever. This was the perfect timing for the truth to emerge. You would not simply expose Eliza. You would do so in a way that left no room for doubt, no opportunity for denial, and in a forum that would have maximum impact. Arya's world tilted. The blood drained from her face, leaving her icy cold plaything. The annual Maxwell Industries shareholder gala, you stated, tapping a finger on a calendar projected onto the wall. It's 3 days from now. Every key investor, every major media outlet, every member of their board will be there. And Eliza Thornton will be at Leo's side, basking in her perceived victory. Leo's side, a sound of profound impatience. Eliza, we've discussed this. It was a distraction, nothing more. A way to blow off steam. It meant nothing. You're my fiancé. You always have been. She understood the terms. Julian understood immediately. A public unveiling, during their moment of triumph. The words struck her like physical blows, each syllable a hammer shattering the carefully constructed edifice of her hope. A distraction meant nothing. She understood the terms. Her knees threatened to buckle. The air felt thin, suffocating. She gripped the edge of her desk, knuckles white, forcing herself to stay upright, to listen to the final, fatal strokes that would seal her fate. Precisely! You confirmed. No whispers, no anonymous leaks. The truth will be presented with irrefutable evidence. And Mr. Maxwell will be forced to confront it in front of everyone who matters. Eliza's voice hardened. Losing all pretense of gentility, she seemed rather enamored. For a distraction. I've seen the way she looks at you. Pitiful, really. But it's almost over now, isn't it? The wedding is in 2 weeks. No more silly dalliances. The Maxwell name cannot afford even a whisper of scandal. Not with this merger on the horizon. You began preparing the presentation of the evidence, not a legal brief, but a concise, undeniable narrative, presented with the same polished precision you applied to your business proposals. The emails, the chat logs, the audio fragments, all compiled into a sequence that would tell an undeniable story of manipulation and deceit. You even planned for contingencies, knowing Eliza would likely try to deny, to deflect, to create another smokescreen. You had prepared counter-evidence for every likely lie. It's over, Leo confirmed, his voice chillingly devoid of emotion. It was always going to be over. She served her purpose. Now focus on the wedding and the merger. That's all that matters. The ethical implications of using such personal, almost voyeuristic information did not escape you. But the deep sense of injustice, the years of pain and the complete upheaval of your life, outweighed any qualms. Eliza had played a dirty game, and now she would face the consequences. You were not seeking petty revenge. You were seeking justice. You believed, fundamentally, that such insidious manipulation deserved to be exposed, not just for your sake, but for the sake of any future victims of her ambition. It was less about vengeance and more about accountability. Arya felt as if a physical fist had slammed into her chest, knocking the air from her lungs. Her secret garden, the place of whispered promises and tender touches, was not just withered, it was razed to the ground, scorched earth left behind. He had lied. Every promise, every vision of Tuscany, every declaration of love, all of it a cruel, elaborate deception. She wasn't his queen. She was a disposable pawn in his intricate game of power and legacy. The days leading up to the gala were a blur of intense preparation. Your team, now fully aware of the stakes, worked with unparalleled dedication. You personally reviewed every piece of evidence, every narrative point, ensuring its undeniable veracity. You practiced your composure, honing your ability to deliver devastating truths with an almost serene calm. A choked sob escaped her lips. Small and raw, it was enough. You remembered the vulnerable girl who had fled that city, broken and believing she was worthless. That girl had been trapped by circumstances and deceit. The woman you were now, A.R. Sterling, was a strategic mastermind, resilient and powerful. You were no longer just reacting to events, you were orchestrating them. The sudden sound made both Leo and Eliza fall silent. Arya didn't wait. A primal scream of pain and fury welled up within her, but she swallowed it, forcing herself to move. Her vision blurred with tears, hot and stinging, but a cold, hard resolve began to crystallize within her. She was not just heartbroken, she was humiliated, incandescent with a rage she had never known. As you prepared for the gala, you chose your attire with the same precision you applied to your strategic maneuvers. This time, it wasn't just about authority. It was about quiet, undeniable triumph. A dress that spoke of elegance, power, and a subtle, almost ethereal beauty. You wanted to be a vision of everything Eliza had tried to destroy. She stumbled towards the office door, flung it open with a force that rattled the frame, and stood there, swaying, her eyes, burning with unshed tears, fixed on Leo. He was standing by his desk, Eliza at his side, both frozen in shock, their faces pale. Eliza's eyes widened in triumph, a brief, wicked smirk flashing across her lips before she quickly masked it with feigned concern. Leo's face, however, was a mask of unreadable horror, his dark eyes meeting hers with a flash of something akin to panic. The night of the gala arrived. The grand ballroom of the Zurich Opera House glittered with chandeliers, the air buzzing with the chatter of the city's elite. Photographers flashed, champagne flutes clinked, and the atmosphere was one of celebration, particularly for Maxwell Industries, who were about to announce their groundbreaking merger and Leo Maxwell's impending engagement to Eliza Thornton. They were poised for their moment of glory. "Arya," he breathed, taking a step towards her, his hand outstretched, his voice, for the first time, held genuine alarm. You walked into the ballroom alone, your presence a ripple in the sea of opulence. Heads turned. Whispers followed in your wake. Everyone knew A.R. Sterling, the enigmatic heiress of Phoenix Holdings, the woman who was holding Maxwell Industries in a vice-like grip during their merger talks. But few knew your face, and fewer still knew your history. But it was too late. Arya's voice, when it came, was a raw, trembling whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a knife. A distraction. A plaything? Is that all I was to you, Leo? Her gaze flickered to Eliza, who now looked genuinely startled, perhaps realizing that Arya had heard more than just snippets. You saw them then, Leo and Eliza, standing near the main stage, surrounded by a throng of well-wishers. Eliza, radiant in a shimmering gown, clung to Leo's arm, her smile wide and seemingly triumphant. Leo, though still looking a little worn from the stressful negotiations, had regained some of his charismatic charm, playing the part of the successful CEO and devoted fiancé. They looked, to the untrained eye, like the perfect power couple. Eliza, ever the quick thinker, recovered first. Arya, darling, you misunderstand. We were just discussing. You paused, taking it all in, the culmination of 5 years of pain, transformation, and meticulous planning. This was where the truth would finally be revealed. The hidden shadows would be dragged into the light, and the architect of your betrayal would finally face her reckoning. The moment was ripe, and you, R. Sterling, were ready to deliver the final, devastating blow. The stage was set for a dramatic unveiling that would shake the foundations of their world. Don't you dare, Arya's voice gained strength, fueled by a searing, purifying anger. Don't you dare try to lie to me again. She turned her full fury on Leo. You promised me a future, you swore you loved me. All those years, all those lies. Was it all just a game to you? Was I just a convenient way to blow off steam before your real life began? The words were laced with acid, the pain in her voice palpable. The grand ballroom of the Zurich Opera House pulsed with a false sense of triumph. For Leo Maxwell and Eliza Thornton, this was meant to be their crowning moment. The public announcement of the Maxwell Industries merger with Phoenix Holdings, seamlessly intertwined with the celebration of their impending nuptials. You watched from a strategic vantage point, a quiet observer amidst the glittering throng, as Leo, looking more relaxed than he had in weeks, raised a champagne flute. Eliza, beaming at his side, looked every inch the victorious fiancée. Her eyes, however, still darted nervously towards you occasionally, a telltale flicker of apprehension beneath her practiced smile. She knew you were a threat, but she hadn't yet grasped the true nature of the storm you were about to unleash. Leo recoiled as if struck. Arya, no, you don't understand. It's not like that. Eliza, leave us. The master of ceremonies, a renowned business journalist, took the stage, his voice booming through the exquisite sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, it is my distinct honor to introduce the man of the hour, the visionary leader behind Maxwell Industries, Mr. Leo Maxwell. Eliza, however, saw her moment. With a practiced sniff, she inserted herself between them. Oh, Leo, don't be absurd. She's clearly hysterical. She needs to understand her place. You have a fiancé. We are getting married in 2 weeks. This fling was always going to end. Perhaps she just had unrealistic expectations. Her tone was dripping with condescension, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Applause erupted, polite yet enthusiastic. Leo stepped forward, embracing Eliza briefly before approaching the podium. He began to speak, his voice resonating with confidence, detailing the historic merger, the synergies with Phoenix Holdings, and the bright future ahead. He spoke of growth, innovation, and shared values. You listened, impassive, allowing him his brief moment in the sun, knowing that the shadow was about to fall. Arya felt a fresh wave of nausea, unrealistic expectations. After 5 years of secret devotion, of giving him her heart and soul, Eliza's words twisted the knife in the wound. As he concluded his remarks, the journalist returned to the stage. And now, he declared, we are equally honored to hear from the esteemed CEO of Phoenix Holdings, Ms. A. R. Sterling, whose brilliant leadership has been instrumental in making this momentous partnership a reality. Leo's eyes darted between Arya's shattered face and Eliza's smug one. Eliza! Enough, he commanded, his voice tight. Arya, please, let me explain. It's complicated. A hush fell over the crowd. Many had heard the name, but few had seen the face of the mysterious woman who had, seemingly overnight, become a titan of global industry. You took a deep breath, composed yourself, and began your slow, deliberate walk towards the stage. Each step was a testament to the journey you had undertaken. Each breath a quiet affirmation of your strength. Complicated. Arya laughed, a harsh, humorless sound that echoed in the silent office. There's nothing complicated about a lie. Leo, there's nothing complicated about betrayal. You played me, you used me, and you let her stand there and mock me. She gestured wildly towards Eliza. You could feel the shift in the room as you moved. Whispers followed your path. Cameras flashed more intensely, and every eye was on you. You met Leo's gaze as you ascended the steps to the stage. His confident smile faltered, replaced by a look of bewildered apprehension. Eliza's face, moments before radiant, drained of color. She gripped Leo's arm, her knuckles white. She knew this wasn't just a thank you speech. At this precise moment, as if fate itself conspired against Arya, the elevator doors at the end of the hall chimed open. 2 senior board members, notorious for their early morning work habits, stepped out, their expressions turning from weary to utterly stunned as they took in the scene Arya, disheveled and tear-streaked, yelling at the CEO, who stood awkwardly with his fiancée. The hushed executive floor suddenly felt like a glaring spotlight. You reached the podium, standing beside Leo. You didn't acknowledge him or Eliza directly, your gaze sweeping over the vast audience. You took a moment, letting the silence settle, allowing the anticipation to build. The air crackled with unspoken questions. Eliza seized the opportunity. With a dramatic gasp, she clutched Leo's arm. Oh dear, I knew this would happen. She's always been so unstable. Ever since Leo decided to prioritize the company over her advances. It's quite sad, really. A rejected employee, making a scene. Her voice was loud enough to carry, laced with a feigned pity that was more humiliating than any insult. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, you began, your voice clear and resonant, perfectly amplified. carrying to every corner of the ballroom. It is indeed an honor to be here tonight, to celebrate what promises to be a groundbreaking union between Maxwell Industries and Phoenix Holdings. A union, I believe, built on a foundation of integrity, transparency, and ultimately, truth. Arya stared at her, horrified. The lie spun so quickly, so effortlessly, hung in the air, transforming her pain into a pathetic spectacle of unrequited obsession. Leo opened his mouth, perhaps to defend her, perhaps to correct Eliza's poisonous narrative. But the words seemed to catch in his throat. He looked caught, trapped between his public image and the raw, exposed truth. Your words, carefully chosen, hung in the air, subtly hinting at deeper layers. You then turned slightly towards Leo, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on your lips. Mr. Maxwell has spoken eloquently of vision and synergy. I would like to delve into another aspect of this partnership, one that is equally vital: the truth behind its formation. And indeed, the truth behind certain personal relationships that have inadvertently, or perhaps quite deliberately, shaped its path. And in that moment, Arya saw it. Not love, not remorse, but fear. Fear of scandal, fear of his family, fear of losing control. He chose his legacy over her. Again. And she was utterly, profoundly done. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not the standard celebratory address. Leo's posture stiffened. Eliza's eyes were wide with dawning horror. Her grip on Leo's arm tightening into a desperate claw. Her voice dropped, cold and precise, cutting through the sudden silence. You are a coward, Leo Maxwell. And you, Eliza, she spat, her eyes burning into the other woman's, are a snake. Enjoy your perfect, hollow life. 5 years ago, you continued, your voice steady, projecting an unwavering calm. A young, naive intern found herself entangled in a clandestine relationship with a powerful CEO. A relationship shrouded in secrecy, promised a future, but ultimately dismissed as a distraction. You paused, allowing the words to sink in, watching Leo's face as a wave of comprehension. Then profound guilt washed over it. He remembered. He finally remembered. Without another word, without looking back, Arya turned and fled. She didn't wait for the elevator. She ran, her heels clattering desperately down the emergency stairwell, each step a jarring echo of her shattered heart. She ran past cleaners, past night security, their startled faces blurring into insignificance. She burst out onto the deserted city street, the cold night air a sharp slap against her burning cheeks. That young woman, you stated, your gaze hardening slightly, was me, Arya Thorne. She just ran. No destination, no plan, just the desperate need to escape the suffocating confines of that building, that city, that life. Her phone, buzzing frantically with calls from Leo. She silenced without a second thought, then pulled out the SIM card and crushed it in her trembling hand. She threw it into a public trash can, a symbolic severing of all ties. She needed to disappear. The gasp that swept through the ballroom was almost audible. Cameras flashed wildly. Leo's head snapped towards you, his eyes wide, disbelieving, then filled with a raw, agonizing understanding. Eliza gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes darting frantically around the room, searching for an escape. She found herself at the bus terminal, a place she hadn't visited since her university days. It was grimy, bustling even in the early hours, a stark contrast to the sterile opulence she'd just left. With the last few dollars in her purse, she bought the first ticket to anywhere, a small town hundreds of miles away, the name of which she barely registered. She just needed distance, anonymity, a place to lick her wounds and figure out how to piece herself back together. You didn't give her one. My departure 5 years ago was not a simple misunderstanding, you declared, your voice gaining a quiet force. It was the result of a meticulously orchestrated campaign of deceit and manipulation, designed to sever ties and secure a personal agenda. As the old bus rumbled out of the city, leaving behind the glittering skyline that had once promised her so much, Arya pressed her face against the cold window. The tears finally came, hot and relentless, washing away 5 years of hope, love, and agonizing deception. She was broken, yes, but beneath the crushing pain, a tiny, defiant ember began to glow. This wasn't the end. This was a brutal, agonizing, necessary ending to one chapter. And the terrifying, uncertain beginning of another. She didn't know where she was going or what she would do, but she knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and exhilarating, that she would never, ever be Leo Maxwell's distraction again. Her old life, her old self, was gone, left behind in the silent, empty corridors of Maxwell Industries, and she had no intention of looking back. You then gestured to Julian, who, with practiced ease, stepped forward and activated a large screen behind you. The first image flashed up the archived email exchange between Eliza Thornton and the administrative assistant, clearly showing Eliza's specific instructions to manipulate Leo's schedule, ensuring his critical investor call coincided precisely with your planned confrontation. The text was highlighted, undeniable. A common historical fact, often overlooked in the romanticized view of ancient societies, is that personal reputation and familial alliances were paramount, particularly in aristocratic circles, to an extent that individual desires or emotional attachments were frequently subordinated to public image and strategic marriages. This mirrors Leo's situation, where his personal feelings, whatever they might have been, were expected to bend to the will of the Maxwell dynasty and the demands of their business empire. His family wouldn't have hesitated to publicly discredit anyone who threatened their carefully constructed image, making Eliza's quick, cutting lie about Arya's hysteria a perfectly plausible, even expected maneuver in that world. It's like a corporate version of arranged marriages, where hearts are secondary to headlines. And Exhibit A, you stated calmly, emails clearly demonstrating the deliberate orchestration of Mr. Maxwell's schedule, ensuring his focus was entirely diverted at a pivotal moment. The goal, to create the ideal circumstances for my abrupt and painful exit, an obscure detail about the communication dynamics in such high-pressure, secrecy-laden relationships, often seen in historical accounts of court intrigues, is that the constant need for discretion can lead to a form of emotional starvation for one or both parties, where genuine intimacy is sacrificed for the sake of appearances, slowly eroding trust and making one partner desperately vulnerable to subtle manipulations from outside forces. Arya's increasing paranoia wasn't entirely unfounded. Eliza's actions, though subtle, were precisely aimed at exploiting the emotional fragility inherent in a secret affair. The lack of open communication, mandated by secrecy, created a fertile ground for deceit to take root and flourish. It's like trying to grow a plant in the dark. It might survive, but it'll be sickly and easily uprooted. A shocked silence descended. Eliza began shaking her head vehemently, muttering, "No, no," under her breath, trying to pull Leo away. But he stood frozen, his eyes glued to the screen, then to you, his face a mask of dawning horror. Historians and sociologists still debate the exact psychological toll that prolonged secrecy and emotional suppression takes on individuals in such relationships, particularly concerning the long-term impact on their ability to trust and form genuine connections. Was Arya's eventual hardening a necessary defense mechanism, or a tragic consequence of years of emotional neglect and betrayal? The delicate balance between self-preservation and emotional well-being in the face of profound deception remains a complex and often tragic area of human experience. Even today, you wonder how much of Arya's future self was forged in the fire of this particular betrayal, and how much was simply a reflection of the strength that was always there, waiting to be unleashed. It's a chicken and egg question, isn't it? But it didn't stop there, you continued, as the screen shifted to the recovered chat logs. Exhibit B, internal messaging logs revealing Eliza Thornton's explicit instructions to a junior marketing associate to plant rumors about Mr. Maxwell's distractions and imminent engagement. A calculated effort to create a false narrative, ensuring my humiliation and justifying my swift removal from his life. As the bus carried her further and further away, the cityscape eventually faded into the inky blackness of the countryside. Arya closed her eyes, exhausted. But a new sensation began to stir within her. It wasn't hope. Not yet. It was something colder, sharper. A fierce resolve. She had lost everything. But in that loss, she had also shed the fragile, naive girl who had allowed herself to be manipulated and discarded. The future was terrifying, uncertain, and barren of any comforting promises. But it was her future now, and she would build it, brick by painful brick, into something strong, something unbreakable. The tears still fell, But beneath them, a silent vow is forming, a promise to herself that one day, Leo Maxwell would regret the day he called her a distraction, and Eliza Thornton would rue the moment she laughed. The crowd buzzed with hushed whispers. Eliza, seeing her carefully constructed world crumbling, made a desperate lunge toward the stage, but two discreet security personnel, prepositioned by Julian, gently but firmly intercepted her, guiding her back to her seat amidst the chaos. She looked like a trapped animal. The Greyhound bus smelled faintly of stale coffee and forgotten dreams. You slump against the window, the vibrations a dull comfort against the raw ache in your heart. The cityscape that once promised so much has receded, replaced by an endless blur of dark fields and distant, twinkling farmhouse lights. Each mile puts more distance between you and the wreckage of your past. But the humiliation, the searing pain of Leo's betrayal, feels as immediate as a fresh wound. You're not just escaping a man, you're fleeing the person you were. The naive girl who believed in whispered promises and secret gardens. That version of you is gone, vaporized in the cold light of a boardroom revelation. Good riddance, you think, though the thought brings little solace. And finally, you stated, your voice now chillingly precise, as the screen displayed the transcription of the recovered phone call. The raw audio clip playing softly enough for those closest to the stage to hear the chilling clarity of Eliza's voice. Exhibit CA recovered audio recording, detailing Ms. Thornton's instructions to a third party. Instructions to ensure that after the staged confrontation, I would be fed false information. That Mr. Maxwell was relieved I was gone, that I was just a fling. You drift in and out of a restless sleep, punctuated by the jarring stops at anonymous small towns. The world outside is a muted canvas, mirroring the emptiness inside you. You pull your threadbare jacket tighter, shivering despite the bus's anemic heating. Your last few dollars are dwindling rapidly, a grim tally of your remaining days of independence. The reality of your situation, stark and unforgiving, begins to prick at the edges of your emotional fog. You have no job, no home, no contacts, and barely any money. You are truly, utterly alone. It's an oddly liberating thought. If you squint at it just right, nothing left to lose. The words echoed in the sudden, agonizing silence of the ballroom. He has a tendency to say exactly what I need him to say when he's under pressure and trying to sound decisive to investors, Eliza's recorded voice stated, cold and calculating. Then ensure the message gets to her that he's relieved she's gone, that she was just a fling, and ensure she believes it. As dawn paints the sky in bruised purples and grays, the bus pulls into a small, nondescript station in a town you've never heard of. You step off, your legs stiff, into the biting morning air. The street is quiet, lined with sleepy storefronts, and a distant church bell chimes, marking the beginning of a new, terrifyingly empty day. You find a park bench, cold and damp, and pull your phone from your bag, remembering too late that you'd crushed the SIM card. It's just a dead weight, a relic of a life you've torched. You almost laugh at the irony. 5 years of being a secret, and now you're officially off the grid, a truly untraceable phantom. You'd probably make an excellent spy, if spies were usually this heartbroken. Leo Maxwell stood utterly still, his face pale, his jaw slack. He looked at Eliza, who was now visibly trembling, tears streaming down her face, no longer capable of maintaining her facade. Then he looked at you, his eyes filled with a mixture of shock, betrayal, and a crushing, belated understanding. The woman he had loved, dismissed, and now stood before him as his most formidable business rival, had just laid bare the most agonizing truth of his life. He was not just a victim of circumstance, but of Eliza's deliberate, cruel machinations. Hours later, hunger gnawing at your stomach, you spot a tiny, quaint post office, an old-fashioned place, with worn wooden floors and a friendly, stout woman behind the counter, on a whim, drawn by a desperate flicker of hope, or perhaps just the faint smell of coffee brewing. You decide to check if any mail has been forwarded from your old, now abandoned, apartment. You don't expect anything. Who would send you mail Leo wouldn't know where to send it? And your few friends were mostly through work, and therefore, through Leo. A common historical truth is that the most devastating form of betrayal is often not direct confrontation, but subtle, insidious manipulation that preys on existing vulnerabilities and trust. From Shakespearean tragedies to modern corporate espionage, The unraveling of such intricate deceit often leads to a public fall from grace for the perpetrator and a painful yet clarifying reckoning for the victim. Eliza's undoing was a textbook example of manipulation reaching its inevitable, catastrophic conclusion. It was like watching a perfectly crafted illusion unravel in slow motion. "Name," the woman asks, peering over her spectacles. "Ms. Thornton," you concluded, turning your gaze directly to Eliza, who was now slumped in her chair, utterly defeated. "Your actions were not merely opportunistic. They were malicious, premeditated, and designed to inflict maximum emotional and professional damage. Such behavior, I believe, has no place in the Maxwell Industries leadership, nor in any partnership that Phoenix Holdings is involved in." Aria Chen," you say, your voice raspy from disuse. You turned back to the stunned audience. "Phoenix Holdings values integrity above all else. This alliance, while strategically sound, cannot proceed with such fundamental breaches of trust at its core. Our due diligence, as you have seen, extends beyond financials to the very character of our partners. Therefore, with immediate effect, Phoenix Holdings is formally withdrawing its proposal for a merger with Maxwell Industries until a thorough, independent investigation into these allegations is completed, and all individuals involved are held accountable." She shuffles through a stack of envelopes, her brow furrowed. Chen. Oh, here we are, a rather thick one, too. Looks important. It's been here a few days." The statement sent a fresh wave of shock through the room. The carefully planned merger, the highlight of the gala, had just collapsed. Leo Maxwell swayed slightly, reaching for the podium for support. His empire, his reputation, his understanding of his own past, all were crumbling around him. She hands you a large, cream-colored envelope, heavy in your hand, addressed in elegant calligraphy. It bears no return address, just a crest you don't recognize. Your heart gives a strange, involuntary lurch. It's certainly not a bill, and it definitely isn't a belated birthday card from a forgotten aunt. Curiosity, a feeling you thought you'd lost, overrides your despair. You walk back to your cold bench, tear open the envelope with trembling fingers, and pull out a stack of formal documents. You stepped away from the podium, leaving the screen displaying the damning evidence. You walked calmly towards the edge of the stage, where Julian was waiting. As you passed Leo, he reached out, his hand grasping your arm. The first document is a letter, typed on heavy watermarked paper. It begins, "Aria," he whispered, his voice raw, desperate. I didn't know. I swear. It wasn't. Not like that. I was blind. Dear Miss Aria Chen." You looked at his face, seeing the genuine anguish there. The arrogant CEO was gone, replaced by a man utterly broken by revelation. For a fleeting moment, a pang of the old sympathy, the old love, stirred within you. But it was quickly overshadowed by the years of pain, the hard-won independence, and the chilling clarity of Eliza's betrayal. It is with profound regret that we inform you of the passing of Mr. Alistair Sterling, who departed peacefully on date 2 weeks prior. Mr. Sterling, a recluse for the majority of his later life, was your maternal grandfather. In his last will and testament, he designated you, his sole surviving direct descendant, as the singular inheritor of his entire estate, including full ownership and control of Phoenix Holdings, a diversified global conglomerate. "You should have known, Leo," you said softly, your voice devoid of malice, but filled with an undeniable sadness. "Or perhaps you should have cared enough to see." You gently removed his hand from your arm. "The truth, Mr. Maxwell, has a way of finding its light, no matter how deeply it's buried." You stop reading. Grandfather's sole inheritor, Phoenix Holdings. Your mind reels, struggling to process the words. You have no grandfather. Your mother, a practical, no-nonsense woman, had always spoken of her parents as having passed away when she was very young, with no mention of extended family, an eccentric, reclusive grandfather, a global conglomerate. It sounds like something out of a bad movie, not your own tragic, very real life. You descended the stage, leaving behind a maelstrom of shock, whispers, and flashing lights. Eliza Thornton was now surrounded by angry investors and confused board members, her perfect world utterly shattered. Leo Maxwell stood alone on stage, a public figure exposed, betrayed, and adrift. You read on, disbelief battling with a strange, surreal calm. The letter details the specifics of vast inheritance, encompassing sprawling real estate, a formidable investment portfolio, and the controlling shares of Phoenix Holdings, a name that, even in your limited financial knowledge, you recognize as a titan in the global market. The sheer scale of it is incomprehensible. You, the recently fired, heartbroken, penniless ex-secret lover of a CEO, are suddenly, inexplicably, the richest heiress in the world. It's like the universe has decided to play the cruelest, most elaborate joke on you, or perhaps the most unexpectedly generous one. You're not sure which? Maybe both. This is definitely one of those moments where you wish you had a tiny, well-meaning sidekick to ask, is this real life or just fantasy? Because honestly, it feels like a fever dream. An obscure detail in the study of corporate ethics reveals that the swift and public exposure of moral transgressions, even by high-ranking executives, often leads to a more rapid and severe consequence than private disciplinary actions, precisely because it undermines the very trust and reputation that underpins corporate success. This public unraveling of Eliza's scheme ensured that her professional and social standing would be irrevocably damaged, a fitting retribution for her calculated cruelty. It was less about a single individual's downfall, and more about a system correcting itself. You spend the next few hours poring over the documents, your analytical mind, despite the emotional wreckage, kicking into gear. There are notarized death certificates, legal wills, trust fund details, and contact information for a law firm in Zurich, Switzerland. The details are meticulous, undeniable. Alistair Sterling was real, his wealth was real, and you, Arya Chen, were now the legal owner of it all. It's a twist so dramatic, so utterly improbable, that it almost makes you laugh with a kind of desperate, hysterical relief. You walked out of the ballroom, Julian at your side, into the cool Zurich night. The air tasted of freedom, of justice, of a bitter victory that was, paradoxically, deeply satisfying. The past had been confronted. The truth had been unveiled. And you, Arya Thorne, now A.R. Sterling, had reclaimed your narrative, not as a victim, but as the orchestrator of your own destiny. The public reckoning was complete. Now, the personal one could begin. You call the Zurich number, using the last few minutes on a payphone you found by the bus station. A crisp, professional voice answers in accented English. Sterling Legal Associates. How may I help you? The aftermath of your dramatic unveiling at the Maxwell Industries shareholder gala was a tempest. The once festive ballroom had devolved into a scene of chaos, with angry investors confronting a visibly shattered Eliza Thornton and media personnel clamoring for statements. You, however, were already gone, a phantom of justice amidst the wreckage. Yet, the true reverberations of your revelation were just beginning to spread, far beyond the confines of that single night. My name is Arya Chen, you stammer, your voice cracking with emotion. I just received a letter regarding Alistair Sterling's estate. For Eliza Thornton, the consequences were swift and brutal. By morning, her meticulously curated public image lay in tatters. Social media, fueled by leaked snippets of your presentation and the widespread media coverage, erupted with outrage. News outlets, initially cautious, quickly escalated their reporting as the irrefutable evidence you presented began to circulate. Her carefully constructed network of alliances crumbled. Board members of various charitable organizations, and even a few minor corporate positions she held swiftly, announced her resignation or temporary leave due to unforeseen personal matters. The very people who had once courted her favor now distanced themselves with startling speed. The socialite facade, built on deceit and ambition, dissolved into public scorn. A pause. Then, the voice sharpens, infused with an almost immediate deference. Ms. Chen, we have been trying to reach you. Mr. Sterling's instructions were very specific regarding your immediate privacy. We were given strict orders to wait for you to make contact. Please, Ms. Chen, where are you? We will arrange for immediate, private transport to bring you to Zurich. We have much to discuss. You watched it all unfold from a discreet distance, Julian feeding you updates. There were rumors of legal action being prepared against her by disaffected investors, and even whispers of a potential criminal investigation for corporate espionage or defamation. though the latter was less likely to materialize in any significant way. Regardless, her world, once so grand and secure, had irrevocably shattered. Her power, derived from social maneuvering and manipulation, had evaporated the moment her true character was exposed. It was a stark reminder that some architects of ruin, eventually, find themselves buried under their own collapsing structures. The urgency in their tone, the immediate shift from polite inquiry to urgent command, solidifies the unbelievable truth. You give them your location, still reeling. Within hours, a sleek black car, looking utterly out of place in the sleepy town, pulls up. A discreet, impeccably dressed man steps out, his face unreadable. He doesn't question your appearance, your small worn bag, or your disheveled state. He simply opens the door, bowing slightly, and ushers you into the luxurious back seat. Meanwhile, Leo Maxwell's response was agonizingly different. Unlike Eliza, who lashed out in denial, Leo retreated into a profound silence, a visible shell of his former self. The confident, charismatic CEO who had once commanded rooms was replaced by a man haunted by guilt and regret. The public humiliation of the gala was one thing, but the personal revelation, the horrifying understanding of how profoundly he had been manipulated and how carelessly he had dismissed you, weighed far heavier on his soul. The journey to the private jet, and then to Zurich, is a blur of surreal comfort. You are given fresh clothes, exquisite food, and a sense of quiet respect that you haven't felt in years, certainly not in Leo's world where your existence was always conditional. You gaze out the window of the jet, watching the clouds drift by, a stark contrast to the turbulent storm raging within you. The little girl who dreamed of fairy tales would be utterly bewildered by this version of reality, a prince who breaks your heart, only for a long-lost grandfather to bequeath you a kingdom. It's like a Cinderella story. If Cinderella's prince was a complete jerk and her fairy godmother was a dead, eccentric billionaire, he canceled all his appointments for 2 days, sequestering himself in his penthouse. Julian informed you that his office was fielding endless calls from concerned board members, frantic investors, and bewildered family members. But Leo spoke to no one. He was, for the first time in years, truly alone with his thoughts, forced to confront the wreckage of his personal life. Upon arrival in Zurich, you are not taken to a hotel, but to a sprawling, understated estate nestled among the Swiss Alps. It's majestic yet incredibly private, a fortress of quiet wealth. Inside, you meet the legal team, led by a formidable woman named Madame Dubois, whose silver hair and piercing eyes suggest she's seen it all. She explains everything, meticulously, patiently. Alistair Sterling, your grandfather, was indeed a reclusive genius, a financial magnate who built Phoenix Holdings from the ground up, diversifying into technology, energy, and sustainable resources, all while operating largely outside the public eye. He had, for reasons known only to him, deliberately kept his existence and his fortune a secret from your mother's branch of the family. Until now, the messages began to trickle in, not through his assistant, but directly to your secure, private number, a number he only knew from your time together, a number you had kept hidden from the world, a number he had clearly never truly forgotten. At first, they were short, desperate pleas. "Arya, please, just 5 minutes. Then, I need to explain. Everything. Finally, a message that broke through your carefully constructed defenses. I remember now, all of it, and I'm so sorry. Mr. Sterling believed in observing from a distance. Madame Dubois explains, her voice calm and measured. He had his reasons for not making contact sooner, which are detailed in his personal journals. He followed your life, Ms. Chen, with great interest. He was immensely proud of your intellect and your perseverance, even when facing adversity. You hesitated. Every fiber of your being urged you to maintain the impenetrable wall you had built. You were R. Sterling, the woman who had sought justice and found it. But the raw, unadulterated pain in his messages chipped away at your resolve. You remember the outline for this story, the promise of a confession, and the truth, you knew, was often far more complex than initial perceptions allowed. A profound sadness washes over you. This man, your grandfather, had watched you, known you, seen your struggles, and yet remained hidden. It's a bitter pill to swallow, this belated recognition, this inheritance that arrives only after he's gone, only after your heart has been shattered. Yet, There's also a strange comfort in knowing you weren't entirely alone, that someone, somewhere, had seen your worth. It's like finding a secret admirer's notes after they've moved away, bittersweet, but still a validation. A common academic debate among psychologists and ethicists is whether genuine remorse can exist in individuals who have caused immense pain, especially when that pain was a result of their own blind spots or convenient choices. Can a person truly be blind to what they don't want to see? Or is it a more active form of self-deception? Leo's anguish suggested a genuine awakening, but the years of your suffering made you question the depth and sincerity of his newfound clarity. It was like trying to discern if a flickering candle was genuinely fading or merely dancing in the wind. The next few months are a whirlwind of legal briefings, financial tutorials, and intense emotional processing. You learn about the vastness of Phoenix Holdings, its global reach, its ethical investments, its innovative technologies. You are introduced to the senior management, a group of sharp, loyal individuals who treat you with utmost respect, not because of your history with Leo, which they are oblivious to, but because you are Alistair Sterling's chosen successor. They see potential, not just inherited status. You agreed to meet on your terms, not in a public place, not in a grand office, but in a neutral, discreet location. You chose a small, unassuming art gallery in a quiet corner of Zurich, after closing hours. You arrived first, Julian waiting in a car a block away. You wanted no witnesses, no cameras, no further spectacle, only truth. A common historical fact about sudden, massive inheritances, particularly in the Victorian era, is that they often came with significant societal pressure and scrutiny, forcing new beneficiaries to quickly adapt to a world of complex financial management, social expectations, and sometimes unexpected dangers from those who felt entitled to a piece of the pie. Just as fortunes in the past could be double-edged swords, bringing both immense power and unforeseen challenges, Arya's inheritance thrusts her into a similar crucible. It's like winning the lottery, but the ticket comes with a mandatory degree in corporate law and a target on your back. Leo arrived moments later, looking utterly bereft. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, and his eyes, once sharp and commanding, were now red-rimmed and hollow. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, a stark contrast to the immaculate CEO you had faced in the boardroom. He looked, surprisingly, smaller. You quickly realized that managing Phoenix Holdings is not about indulging in frivolous luxuries. It's about immense responsibility, strategic thinking, and navigating a global network of power. You immerse yourself in the work, driven by a new, cold determination. The pain of betrayal, instead of consuming you, becomes a raw, powerful fuel. You will not just survive, you will thrive. You will not just manage, you will dominate. And you will do it on your own terms, beholden to no man, no family, and no hidden agenda. He stopped a few feet from you, his hands clenched at his sides. He didn't try to approach, didn't try to touch you. He simply stood there, his gaze fixed on your face, a mixture of awe and pain etched in his features. An obscure detail about the psychology of individuals who experience profound, unexpected windfalls, particularly after periods of significant hardship, is that they often develop an intense, almost obsessive need for control and self-reliance, fearing a return to vulnerability. This can manifest as an accelerated learning curve in areas they were previously unfamiliar with, driven by a deep-seated desire to ensure their newfound security is unassailable and entirely dependent on their own capabilities. Arya's rapid absorption of corporate finance isn't just a matter of intelligence. It's a primal response to trauma, a fierce resolve to never again be caught unprepared or powerless. It's the never again mentality. But with private jets and multi-billion-dollar portfolios, Arya, he finally managed, his voice barely a whisper, thick with emotion. I don't know where to begin. Academics and philosophers have long debated the impact of sudden, immense wealth on an individual's moral compass and personal identity. Does it corrupt? Or does it simply amplify existing traits? Does it offer true freedom? Or merely exchange one set of chains for another? Albeit gilded, one's Arya finds herself at this very crossroads. The power is intoxicating, the potential limitless, but the question lingers, will this new horizon truly erase the shadows of her past, or simply transform them into something more formidable? You wonder if the girl who cried on a bus seat is still somewhere inside, or if she's been completely subsumed by the sharp, calculating woman poring over ledgers. Start with the truth, Leo. You said, your voice calm, unwavering. You were not here for platitudes. You were here for answers. You spend your days at the Phoenix Holdings global headquarters in Zurich, a sleek, state-of-the-art building that feels miles away from the ornate, old money aesthetic of Maxwell Industries. You learn from the best, absorbing everything about corporate governance, international trade, and the complex web of global finance. You spend evenings reading your grandfather's meticulously kept journals, tracing his journey from humble beginnings to a titan of industry. You discover he was a man of fierce integrity, a visionary who believed in using wealth for ethical purposes, often investing in sustainable technologies and humanitarian initiatives that resonated deeply with your own emerging values. He swallowed hard, his eyes filling with tears. I remember the day you left, he began, his voice raspy. Not just the conversation, but everything before it. The pressure. My father was threatening to pull funding from the Alistair project if I didn't settle down and merge with Eliza's family company. He called you a distraction, a passing fancy, and he said I needed to show I was serious, ruthless even, if I wanted to inherit the full empire. You slowly begin to shed the emotional baggage of your past. The naive Arya, the secret lover, the heartbroken victim. She's not entirely gone, but she's buried deep beneath layers of steel and intellect. You cultivate an air of cool detachment, a professional demeanor that belies the fire that still burns within. You learn to project authority, to command respect, to make decisions with a clarity and precision that surprises even your seasoned executives. You are no longer reacting to events, you are shaping them. He took a shaky breath. Eliza. She seemed to understand. She was always there, reminding me of my responsibilities, subtly pushing the idea that you were compromising my focus. I was so caught up in proving myself, in securing my legacy, that I started to believe her. Or at least, I let myself be convinced that you were a complication I couldn't afford right then. The transformation is profound. You dress in impeccably tailored suits, your hair styled with sleek precision. Your gaze, once soft and trusting, is now sharp, analytical, missing nothing. You speak with a calm authority, your voice low but firm. You are no longer just Arya Chen, you are A.R. Sterling, the enigmatic and formidable new heiress of Phoenix Holdings. You are building an impenetrable fortress around your heart, a fortress of power, wealth, and unyielding self-reliance. The path of rebuilding yourself is not just about financial recovery. It's about reclaiming every ounce of dignity and self-worth that was stolen from you. And deep down, a tiny, cold flicker of purpose ignites to show the world, and specifically Leo Maxwell and Eliza Thornton, that the distraction they so carelessly discarded has become a force to be reckoned with. A phoenix rising from the ashes of her shattered past, ready to set the world on fire. He looked at you, his gaze pleading. That day, when you walked in, I was on the phone with a major investor. The Alistair deal was hanging by a thread. I was under immense pressure to sound decisive, to cut ties with anything that seemed unprofessional, and Eliza Haddock made sure that phone call happened at that exact moment. She had manipulated my schedule. She had been whispering in my ear for weeks about how you were becoming a distraction, and when I saw you, my mind just went to the easiest, most brutal way to sound convincing to the investor on the line. I said those words. Arya, I said you were a distraction. And I hung up. And then you were gone. The Swiss Alps, with their jagged peaks and pristine, silent valleys, became your classroom. The sprawling estate, once a place of quiet contemplation for your reclusive grandfather, transformed into your personal crucible. You, Arya Chen, the heartbroken intern, had vanished. In her place, a new identity was meticulously, even painfully, forged. A.R. Sterling. It wasn't just a name, it was a shield, a promise, and a weapon, all at once. He squeezed his eyes shut, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. Eliza found me immediately after. She told me you had packed your things and left, that you said you couldn't handle the pressure. She reinforced everything, told me it was for the best, that you weren't strong enough for my world. She even showed me a fake message, supposedly from you, saying you were happy to be free. I was. I was a coward, Arya. I wanted to believe it, because it made my life easier. I let myself be blind. The first few months were a blur of intense, unrelenting education. Madame Dubois, the head of Sterling Legal Associates, was more than just a lawyer. She was a mentor, a taskmaster, and a formidable gatekeeper to your grandfather's legacy. She possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of finance, law, and corporate strategy, delivered with an unwavering expectation of excellence. You were a sponge, soaking up every detail, every nuance. Your analytical mind, honed by years of quietly observing Leo Maxwell's empire, proved to be an invaluable asset. You picked up complex financial models with startling speed, devoured legal briefs, and mastered the intricate dance of international trade agreements. A common historical truth about human vulnerability is that individuals under immense pressure, particularly from familial or professional expectations, are highly susceptible to manipulation, often choosing to believe narratives that alleviate their immediate stress, even if those narratives are fundamentally false. This isn't always malice, but a survival mechanism, a desperate attempt to find an easy path. Leo's confession wasn't just about Eliza's manipulation. It was about his own complicity, his own convenient blindness, a realization that was far more damning for him than any public scandal. It was like realizing you'd been sleepwalking for years, and now you were finally awake, facing the consequences. You started with the basics, so poring over historical ledgers of Phoenix Holdings, understanding its evolution from a small energy startup to a diversified global conglomerate. You learned about the pioneering investments your grandfather had made in renewable energy, in ethical manufacturing, in innovative tech solutions that were still years ahead of their time. He wasn't just a rich man, he was a visionary, and a man who believed in wealth with purpose. This resonated deeply with you, offering a sense of meaning to the enormous fortune you had inherited. It wasn't just money, it was a platform. I looked for you. Later, he continued, his voice heavy with self-loathing. After things settled, I tried, but Eliza had covered her tracks so well, and my father, he discouraged it, said it was unprofessional. I told myself it was for the best. I lied to myself. I told myself you were happy, that you had moved on, that it was all for the best. But I never forgot you, Arya, not truly. And when I saw you walk into that boardroom, it was like a tidal wave. All the lies, all the self-deception. It all shattered. Your days began before dawn, with tutorials on global economics, market analysis, and advanced negotiation tactics. You learned about the subtle art of reading body language, the power of calculated silence, the importance of controlling the narrative in any boardroom. You were taught about the historical precedents of corporate takeovers, the ruthless strategies employed by titans of industry, and the intricate web of legal loopholes that could make or break a deal. Madame Dubois insisted on practical application, subjecting you to mock negotiations, role-playing scenarios where you had to defend Phoenix Holdings' interests against aggressive, fictional competitors. You stumbled, you failed, but you learned. He finally looked directly at you, his gaze raw and pleading. I know words aren't enough. I know what I did, what I allowed to happen. Destroyed you. I destroyed us. And I'm so profoundly sorry. I was arrogant, blinded by ambition and family pressure. I loved you, Arya. I truly did. And I let someone else destroy that, because I was too weak, too much of a coward to stand up for it. I should have fought for you. I should have seen through her. I should have chosen you. Evenings were dedicated to personal transformation. You hired consultants for everything: executive presence, public speaking, and even a discreet, world-class personal stylist who understood that your clothes needed to project authority, not just fashion. You learned to walk with confidence, to command a room with your gaze, to speak with a calm, authoritative voice that left no room for doubt. Your wardrobe shifted from modest, office-appropriate attire to impeccably tailored suits and sophisticated dresses that subtly emphasized power and elegance. Your hair, once styled simply, was now a sleek, sharp statement. Every external detail was carefully considered, meticulously crafted to align with the formidable persona of A.R. Sterling. He took a step closer, his voice breaking. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know the truth, the full, ugly truth. I was lost. Arya, and I let my ambition and Eliza's insidious manipulation cost me the one thing that truly mattered. The emotional transformation, however, was the hardest. The pain of Leo's betrayal was a constant companion, a dull ache beneath the surface of your determined focus. You didn't suppress it, you transmuted it, you channeled the humiliation, the anger, the profound sense of being discarded, into a cold, fierce resolve. You would never again be vulnerable. You would never again allow yourself to be a distraction. This wasn't revenge in the petty sense, not a simple act of striking back. This was about justice, about proving your inherent worth, not just to Leo and Eliza, but to yourself. You stood there, silent, absorbing his confession. The raw emotion, the genuine remorse in his eyes, was undeniable. This wasn't the arrogant CEO from the past. This was a man stripped bare, facing the painful consequences of his choices. The depth of his regret was palpable, almost overwhelming the small gallery space. You meticulously constructed an emotional fortress around your heart. Friendships were kept at a professional distance. Relationships were non-existent. Every interaction was filtered through a lens of cautious analysis. You became adept at reading people, at spotting insincerity, at detecting hidden agendas. This was a direct consequence of Leo's betrayal, a survival mechanism in the cutthroat world you now inhabited. It was lonely. Yes, but it felt safe. An obscure detail in the dynamics of reconciliation suggests that true forgiveness often begins not with an immediate absolution, but with the full and unvarnished confession of the wrongdoer, acknowledging the pain caused without making excuses. This allows the injured party to process the truth on their own terms, separating the intent from the impact. Leo's raw, unedited apology, devoid of blame, was the first step towards any form of healing. It was like finally getting a clear picture after years of blurry images. A common historical truth is that individuals who experience a dramatic shift in social status, especially from vulnerability to immense power, often undergo a profound psychological transformation, developing a heightened sense of self-preservation and a strategic mindset that can appear cold or calculating to outsiders. Think of historical figures who rose from obscurity to leadership. Their personal experiences often shaped their ruthless efficiency. You, too, were being shaped by your own crucible, turning heartbreak into unshakable resolve. It's like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, except this butterfly has sharp edges and a keen understanding of global finance. Your own emotions were a turbulent sea. The anger, the pain, the sense of betrayal, they were still there, deep within you. But hearing his confession, understanding the layers of manipulation, added a new complexity. He had been manipulated, yes, but he had also allowed himself to be blind, to be a coward. His vulnerability, however, felt genuine. You also immersed yourself in martial arts training, not for aggression, but for discipline, for mental clarity, and for a visceral understanding of your own strength. The intense physical exertion was a welcome release, a way to channel the restless energy and underlying tension. You learned to control your breath, to focus your mind, to move with precision and power. It was another layer in the formidable armor you were building. You were blind, Leo, you said, your voice soft, but firm. And I paid the price for your blindness. For 5 years, I built a new life, brick by painful brick, out of the ashes of what you and Eliza destroyed. I found my own strength, my own power, because I had to, not because I wanted to, beyond the formal lessons. You delved into your grandfather's personal journals. They were a treasure trove of wisdom, not just about business, but about life. He wrote about the importance of integrity, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the true meaning of legacy. He spoke of his regrets, his triumphs, and the quiet satisfaction of building something meaningful. Reading his words, you felt a connection to a man you'd never met, a sense of belonging to a lineage that was about more than just wealth. It was about principles. He had deliberately lived off the grid, avoiding public scrutiny, always observing, always learning. You began to understand his reasons for keeping you hidden, a calculated move to protect you from the very world you were now poised to conquer. He saw the wolves, and he made sure his legacy would be in safe, uncorrupted hands. He nodded, tears still streaming down his face. I know, and I see it now. You are stronger than anyone I've ever met, Arya, and I wasted it. I let her take it all away. I lost you. You honed your intuition, a skill you'd always possessed but had stifled in Leo's orbit. You learned to trust your gut feelings, to see patterns others missed, to anticipate moves before they were made. This wasn't just about data. It was about human psychology, about the invisible currents that flowed beneath the surface of every deal, every conversation. You became a formidable poker player, not just with cards, but with people. You took a deep breath, the scent of old oil paint and dust filling the air. This was the moment of reckoning you had unknowingly craved. He had confessed. He had apologized. Truly apologized. The weight of the untold story, the buried truth, had finally lifted. The personal part of your mission was, in a way, complete. 5 years vanished in a relentless cycle of learning, growing, and transforming. You traveled the world, not as a tourist, but as an observer of Phoenix Holdings' vast operations. You visited their sustainable farms in South America, their tech incubators in Silicon Valley, their renewable energy plants in Scandinavia. You met the people behind the numbers, the dedicated employees who shared your grandfather's vision. This first-hand experience grounded your theoretical knowledge, giving you a comprehensive understanding of the conglomerate from the ground up. But forgiveness, you knew, was not a simple switch. It was a journey, and whether you were willing to embark on that journey with Leo, or whether your path would now diverge completely, remained the most profound question of all. The public confrontation had been devastating. The private confession was heartbreaking. The path forward was still shrouded in uncertainty. An obscure detail about the historical precedent for dark horses suddenly emerging as powerful figures, often after a period of intense, self-imposed exile or quiet study, is that their lack of public profile allows them to develop strategies and insights unburdened by established expectations or the scrutiny of rivals. They become outsiders with insider knowledge, making them unpredictably dangerous to those who rely solely on conventional intelligence gathering. This applied perfectly to your situation. While Leo and Maxwell Industries were focused on their public image and the corporate grapevine, you were quietly becoming a force they couldn't possibly anticipate. It's like training a secret ninja army in a hidden dojo while your enemies are busy practicing polite bows at tea ceremonies. The morning after the gala dawned with an almost surreal calm, a stark contrast to the storm that had erupted. For Eliza Thornton, the public humiliation was merely the first gust of a hurricane. The immediate aftermath was a flurry of emergency board meetings, legal consultations, and frantic attempts to control a narrative that had already spiraled irrevocably out of her grasp. The evidence you presented, coupled with Leo Maxwell's stunned silence on stage and his subsequent withdrawal from public view, left no room for doubt. During this period, you never once contacted anyone from your old life. You severed all ties, burned all bridges. You knew that for your transformation to be complete, you needed a clean break. The pain of the past was a constant reminder, a low thrum beneath your skin, but it no longer consumed you. It fueled you. It sharpened your resolve. You didn't want revenge that would destroy you. You wanted a justice that would elevate you, proving that kindness and integrity, when armed with intelligence and power, could ultimately prevail over deceit and manipulation. Eliza's meticulously cultivated network, built on superficial charm and strategic alliances, evaporated overnight. Her social engagements were canceled. Her name became synonymous with scandal, and her powerful family, fearing damage to their own reputation, began to subtly, but definitively, distance themselves. The whispers of legal action from disaffected Maxwell Industries investors quickly solidified into formal complaints. Accusations of corporate espionage, market manipulation through misrepresentation, and even a class action lawsuit for damages due to the failed merger began to mount. The decision to re-enter Leo's orbit, to specifically target Maxwell Industries, was not made lightly. It wasn't a spontaneous act of vengeance, but a calculated, strategic move. You had watched Maxwell Industries from afar, your analysts providing meticulous reports. You knew their strengths, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. You knew Leo's own ambition, his desire to expand, to consolidate. The timing, you realized, was perfect. You learned, through Julian's discreet channels, that Eliza was facing not just social ostracization, but genuine legal and financial ruin. Her personal assets, once considerable, were being scrutinized, frozen, and leveraged to fight the onslaught of legal battles. Her ambition, once her greatest strength, had become her undoing. A testament to the old saying that pride often comes before a fall, she had grasped too far, and in doing so, had lost everything. Her lavish lifestyle, her carefully constructed image, all dissolved into the harsh reality of legal documents and public contempt. It was a spectacular implosion, a public execution of a social and corporate climber. Your true motive wasn't just to make Leo regret his actions, though that was certainly a satisfying byproduct. It was about leveling the playing field. It was about showing that the discarded distraction was now a player on a global stage, a formidable opponent who understood the game better than they ever imagined. It was about justice for yourself, yes, but also about disrupting the kind of corporate culture that allowed individuals like Leo to wield power without true accountability for their personal actions. You were doing it for every person who had ever been underestimated, manipulated, or discarded. You were a quiet, elegant storm, brewing just beyond their complacent horizon. For you, Arya, the initial days following the gala were a complex tapestry of emotions. There was a deep, undeniable satisfaction in seeing justice served. The years of pain, the feeling of being discarded, the raw humiliation, all of it had found a voice and a reckoning. You had delivered on your promise to yourself, reclaiming your narrative and exposing the architect of your suffering. The heavy weight that had rested on your shoulders for half a decade finally began to lift, replaced by a liberating sense of accomplishment. As you stood before the mirror one morning, fully dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, your gaze sharp and unwavering, you barely recognized the reflection. The soft, vulnerable girl with wide, trusting eyes was gone. In her place was a woman of steel, a powerful force, ready to reclaim her narrative. You had faced your demons, embraced your power, and transformed your pain into purpose. You were Sterling, the richest heiress. Yes, but more importantly, you were a woman who had forged herself anew, stronger and more formidable than anyone could ever anticipate. The world, and Leo Maxwell, were about to meet a very different area. The phoenix had fully risen, and she was ready for her grand strategic flight. Yet, amidst this triumph, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions began to churn within you, particularly regarding Leo. His raw, unfiltered confession in the art gallery had resonated deeper than you expected. You had walked in prepared for a confrontation, perhaps even further denials, but not for the sight of a powerful man stripped bare, admitting his cowardice, his blindness, and his profound regret. His genuine remorse was palpable, and it complicated the neat lines of your anger and resentment. Historians often ponder the long-term effects of personal vendettas. Even when cloaked in business strategies, does the pursuit of justice, or what one perceives as justice, ultimately liberate the individual, or does it merely bind them to the very past they seek to overcome? Arya's motives were complex, a blend of righteous anger, a desire for validation, and a profound commitment to her grandfather's ethical vision. The question of whether her actions would truly free her, or merely redefine her chains, remained an open one, a silent undercurrent to her every calculated move. You wonder if, beneath the steel, a part of her still yearned for a different kind of peace, one that didn't involve confronting the ghosts of her past. You spent hours in your penthouse, staring out at the Zurich skyline, the city lights mirroring the complex thoughts flickering in your mind. You replayed his words, "I was a coward. Arya, I wanted to believe it, because it made my life easier. I let myself be blind. And then, I loved you, Arya. I truly did. And I let someone else destroy that, because I was too weak, too much of a coward to stand up for it. I should have fought for you. I should have seen through her. I should have chosen you." 5 years after you vanished from Leo Maxwell's life, a seismic tremor began to ripple through the global corporate landscape. The whispers started in hushed boardrooms, and then erupted onto financial news channels. Maxwell Industries, a titan of innovation and a bastion of old money, was on the cusp of its most ambitious expansion yet. They were seeking a massive merger, a strategic alliance that would solidify their dominance in the tech and energy sectors, propelling them into an unprecedented era of growth. For the financial world, it was the talk of the town, the biggest deal of the decade. For you, R. Sterling. It was a perfectly timed, exquisitely wrapped gift. His words, agonizingly honest, resonated with a truth you had repressed. He had been under immense pressure. His father's control, the weight of the family legacy, the precariousness of the Alistair deal. These were not excuses, but contributing factors to his vulnerability. Eliza had exploited those vulnerabilities with surgical precision, turning his weaknesses into weapons against you both. You saw now that he, too, had been a victim of her manipulation, albeit a complicit one. You received the initial intelligence report on the proposed merger from your chief strategist, a sharp, seasoned analyst named Julian Vance, whose loyalty to Phoenix Holdings was as unwavering as his gaze. He placed the thick dossier on your sleek, minimalist desk in your Zurich office, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Sterling," he began, his voice calm. "Maxwell Industries has formally opened negotiations for a merger. They're looking for a partner with significant assets in sustainable energy infrastructure and cutting-edge AI development. Our analysts believe they've approached several key players, but their ideal fit, judging by their recent public statements, seems to align almost perfectly with Phoenix Holdings." A common academic debate in psychology revolves around the concept of moral culpability versus situational influence. How much responsibility does an individual bear for their actions when they are under extreme pressure or are actively being manipulated? While Leo certainly bore responsibility for his blindness and cowardice, Eliza's active, malicious orchestration shifted a significant portion of the blame. This nuance made your emotional landscape far more complex than simple anger. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, only to find more layers, each bringing a different kind of sting. You leaned back in your ergonomic chair, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on your lips. This was it, the moment you had, perhaps unconsciously, been preparing for 5 years. Every rigorous training session, every late night poring over financial data, every calculated move to expand Phoenix Holdings' ethical and technological reach had been building to this. It wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the symmetry, the poetic justice. Leo Maxwell, the man who had discarded you as a distraction, was now unknowingly seeking a partnership with the empire you commanded. The universe, it seemed, had a darkly ironic sense of humor. You wondered if he had ever actually used that absurd crocodile dung sunscreen. And if he had, whether his skin was still as perfect as his lies. Probably. The scars of the past ran deep. However, the image of him dismissing you, the cold, calculated cruelty of Eliza's lies, the 5 years of rebuilding your life from absolute zero, these were not easily forgotten. Your hard-won independence, the fierce, unyielding strength you had forged in the crucible of adversity, was now your most cherished possession. It had been born from pain, but it was yours. Could you risk that independence, that self-sufficiency, for a relationship that had once brought you such profound heartache? Phoenix Holdings is indeed an ideal fit, you confirmed, your voice calm, belying the surge of adrenaline that coursed through your veins. Our sustainable energy portfolio is unmatched, and our AI division has made groundbreaking strides that remain largely proprietary. They will be very interested. Julian, ever observant, offered a subtle piece of advice one afternoon as you reviewed the latest updates on Eliza's legal woes. "Ms. Sterling," he said, his voice quiet. "Justice, once served, does not always equate to peace. Sometimes, the true challenge begins after the battle is won, especially when the heart is involved." He didn't push, but his words lingered. Julian, accustomed to your meticulous nature, simply nodded. "We've anticipated this. Our teams are already compiling a preliminary offer. We could be ready to present in a week." You knew what he meant. The public reckoning had been decisive. Eliza had received her just desserts, and more was likely to come. But the personal reckoning, the one within your own heart, was far from over. "No," you interjected, a cold glint entering your eyes. "Not a week. We need to let them sweat. Let them exhaust other avenues. Let them become desperate." You stood, walking to the panoramic window that offered a sweeping view of the snow-capped mountains. "And we won't be submitting a preliminary offer. We will wait for their invitation." Leo, after his initial period of reclusion, began to take steps to address the chaos within Maxwell Industries. He publicly acknowledged the failed merger, accepting full responsibility for the oversight and due diligence, and promising transparency. He didn't mention Eliza by name in his public statements, but the implication was clear. He fired several key personnel who had been complicit in Eliza's schemes, and he began a rigorous internal review process aimed at rebuilding trust and integrity within the company. He also started reaching out to the disaffected investors, attempting to mitigate the damage. He was, slowly, but surely, trying to clean up the mess. Julian raised an eyebrow, a rare flicker of surprise crossing his stoic face. That's an unconventional approach, Ms. Sterling. It could be seen as hesitant, even arrogant. Maxwell Industries isn't used to being kept waiting. His personal appeals to you continued, but they shifted in tone. They were no longer desperate pleas, but quiet, consistent expressions of remorse and a willingness to simply be there. He sent you a single white rose every day for a week, each with a short, handwritten note thinking of you. Still sorry. Just hoping for understanding. He didn't ask for a meeting, didn't demand forgiveness. He simply acknowledged your existence and his enduring regret. Precisely, you said, turning to face him, a predatory gleam in your eyes. They're used to dictating terms. They're used to being the biggest fish in the pond. We will remind them that there are bigger oceans. This isn't just a business deal, Julian. It's a statement. We control the narrative from the very first interaction. One evening, you found yourself standing by your window, clutching one of his notes, just hoping for understanding. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about you. Could you understand? Could you move past the betrayal, the pain, the profound disappointment? Or had the past irrevocably shaped your future, sealing you off from the very vulnerability that had once allowed you to love so fiercely? Your true motive wasn't merely to exact petty revenge. The superficial satisfaction of seeing Leo's shock would be fleeting. No, this was about something far deeper. It was about reclaiming your dignity. Yes, but also about dismantling the arrogance and unaccountability that had defined his world. It was about exposing the true nature of his character, not just to the corporate world, but to himself. You weren't just taking a piece of his business. You were dismantling his carefully constructed reality. You wanted justice, not just retribution. The truth about reconciliation, as many therapists and relationship experts understand, is that it is not about forgetting the past or excusing the harm, but about acknowledging the reality of what happened, processing the emotions, and deciding whether a new, different future is possible based on mutual understanding and change behavior. It requires immense courage from both sides, the courage to apologize genuinely and the courage to potentially risk vulnerability again. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give to someone else, it's a gift you give to yourself, releasing the burden of anger and resentment, but it doesn't mean forgetting the lesson learned. It was like tending to a deep wound. It might heal, but the scar would always remain, a reminder of what it had endured. Over the next few weeks, you meticulously orchestrated every step of Phoenix Holdings' strategic silence. While other companies scrambled to submit proposals to Maxwell Industries, you remained conspicuously quiet, a powerful, enigmatic entity hovering just beyond their grasp. Your public relations team, under your strict guidance, issued vague, non-committal statements about Phoenix Holdings' long-term investment strategies, hinting at significant, undisclosed projects, without ever mentioning the Maxwell merger. This calculated ambiguity only heightened Maxwell Industries' curiosity, transforming you from a potential partner into a tantalizing, almost mythical, prize. It's like playing hard to get, but on a global corporate scale, where the stakes are billions of dollars and decades of legacy, you were the unattainable one, and that made you infinitely more desirable. You considered the cost of forgiveness. It wasn't just about Leo, it was about you. Holding on to the anger, the bitterness, would mean remaining shackled to a past you had fought so hard to escape. But letting go, opening yourself up again, carried its own risks. You had built an empire, but your heart had remained carefully guarded. Could you allow yourself to be vulnerable again, even with someone who had caused you such profound pain, but who now seemed truly remorseful? You spent countless hours with your internal teams, preparing for every conceivable scenario. You knew Maxwell Industries inside out, their corporate structure, their key personnel, their financial strengths, and more importantly, their hidden weaknesses. You had meticulously followed their market performance, their expansion plans, even the private philanthropic ventures Leo's family championed for public image. You remembered every casual conversation with Leo about his father's expectations, his mother's meticulous social planning, and Eliza's relentless ambition. These seemingly trivial details, once shared in the intimacy of a secret relationship, now became invaluable strategic insights. It was like having the cheat codes to a game your opponent thought he was winning fair and square. You found yourself reflecting on the irony of your transformation. 5 years ago, you had been a CEO's secret lover, longing for a future that was always out of reach, always just beyond the next promised milestone. Now, you were the richest heiress, commanding respect and power, the architect of your own destiny. You had everything you could have ever dreamed of, materially, but the ache in your heart, the residue of that old love and betrayal, remained. A common historical truth is that information, especially highly specific and personal details about an adversary, has historically been a potent weapon in both warfare and diplomacy, often leading to decisive victories. From ancient spies to modern intelligence agencies, understanding an opponent's motivations, vulnerabilities, and internal dynamics can grant an insurmountable advantage. Your intimate knowledge of Leo, gained through a painful personal experience, was now your sharpest strategic tool, a historical precedent playing out in a modern boardroom. It's like having access to Caesar's personal diary before a battle. Unfair, but effective. You thought about the path you had walked, the despair, the unexpected inheritance, the ruthless training, the calculated return. Every step had been driven by a need for justice and self-preservation. But now that justice was achieved, what was next? Was it simply to continue building a corporate empire, devoid of deeper connection? Or was there space for something more, something softer, something that acknowledged the lessons learned, but also the enduring capacity for human connection? The call finally came, precisely when you anticipated it. Leo Maxwell himself, through his senior executive assistant, formally requested a meeting to discuss a potential strategic partnership. You allowed his assistant to wait on hold for a full minute, a subtle power play, before your own assistant, trained to perfection, transferred the call. The concept of closure is often debated in trauma recovery. Is it a definitive end, or an ongoing process of integrating painful experiences into one's life story? For Aria, the gala had provided a powerful form of public closure, but the private closure, the healing of her heart, was a much longer, more nuanced journey. It was like reaching the summit of a mountain, only to realize the true journey was in descending it and navigating the terrain below. Mr. Maxwell, you said, your voice cool, composed, utterly devoid of any recognition of the past. This is A.R. Sterling. How may Phoenix Holdings be of assistance? You decided that you wouldn't make any rash decisions. Your power now gave you the luxury of time, of choice. You wouldn't be rushed, wouldn't be pressured. You had achieved remarkable success and independence, and that was a foundation no one could take away. The question of Leo, and of your heart, would be approached with the same careful consideration you applied to your most complex business deals. On the other end of the line, Leo's voice, once so familiar, now sounded formal, almost strained. Ms. Sterling, thank you for taking my call. I understand Phoenix Holdings is not actively seeking external partnerships, but we at Maxwell Industries believe there's a unique synergy between our companies, particularly in sustainable energy and AI. We'd be honored if you would consider a preliminary discussion. The reckoning for Eliza was ongoing, a public spectacle of her downfall. The redemption for Leo had begun, a private, agonizing journey of self-reflection and regret. For you, Aria, the heiress. The journey was about navigating the intricate balance between the steel you had forged and the tender heart that still beat beneath it. The justice was sweet, but the path to true peace, to profound fulfillment, was still being written. The scars remained, undeniable reminders of the past, but they no longer dictated your future. You were free to choose, truly choose, for the first time in a very long time. You paused, letting the silence stretch, a calculated delay. Mr. Maxwell, Phoenix Holdings is always open to exploring opportunities that align with our core values and vision for the future. However, our schedule is demanding. Our current projects are quite significant. Would you be willing to travel to Zurich for this preliminary discussion? My time here is rather constrained. In the whirlwind aftermath of the gala, while Eliza Thornton spiraled into legal and social oblivion and Leo Maxwell wrestled with personal demons and corporate damage control, Aria, pivoted with practiced ease back to the business at hand. The public revelation had served its purpose, clearing the air and asserting your power. Now, it was time to solidify Phoenix Holdings' position as a dominant force in the global market, proving that your success was not merely inherited, but a testament to your own strategic brilliance and leadership. It was a bold move. Maxwell Industries rarely traveled to initiate mergers. Typically, potential partners came to them. You could almost hear his internal debate: arrogance versus desperation. Your first move was swift and decisive. You issued a formal press release, concise and impeccably worded, explaining Phoenix Holdings' withdrawal from the Maxwell Industries merger. It cited unforeseen discrepancies in partner due diligence concerning ethical standards and corporate governance, carefully avoiding direct accusation but leaving no doubt as to the reason. The market, initially volatile, responded positively to your firm stance, recognizing your commitment to integrity. This strategic move not only salvaged Phoenix Holdings' reputation, but elevated it, portraying you as a leader who valued principles over mere profit. Zurich, Leo repeated, a slight hesitation in his voice. Understood. We can make the necessary arrangements. When would be convenient for you? Next, you convened a series of high-level meetings with your executive team. Julian, ever the silent, efficient backbone, had already prepared detailed reports on alternative investment opportunities. The failed Maxwell merger had freed up significant capital and strategic bandwidth. You directed the team to explore new avenues for expansion, particularly in emerging tech sectors and sustainable energy, industries that aligned with your long-term vision and offered immense growth potential. Your approach was methodical, analytical, and surprisingly aggressive. You offered him a date 2 weeks out, ensuring enough time for his team to make the logistical arrangements and for you to finalize every minute detail of your grand re-entry. Excellent, you said, a hint of satisfaction in your tone. My assistant will coordinate with yours. We look forward to a productive discussion. Mr. Maxwell, one such opportunity arose in the form of Altair Innovations, a struggling but highly promising renewable energy startup that Maxwell Industries had been eyeing for years. Their technology was revolutionary, but they lacked the capital and experienced leadership to scale. You saw the potential immediately. Instead of a direct acquisition, you proposed a strategic partnership. Phoenix Holdings would provide substantial funding, expertise, and global market access, while Altair would retain a significant degree of operational autonomy and their core leadership. It was a deal designed to empower, not merely absorb. You hung up, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across your face. The bait was taken. The game was officially on. The negotiations were intense. Altair's founders were wary, having seen many larger corporations crush smaller innovators. You, however, approached them with genuine respect and a clear vision for their growth. You spoke their language, understood their passion, and articulated a pathway to success that transcended mere financial investment. You even brought Julian, whose quiet, logical arguments often swayed even the most skeptical, into the discussions. The contrast to Leo's prior, more aggressive attempts to acquire them couldn't have been starker. The next 2 weeks were a flurry of strategic preparations. You didn't just plan for the merger, you choreographed your unveiling. You decided to attend the initial meeting yourself, a departure from your usual practice of sending senior executives for preliminary talks. This was personal, and it required your direct presence. We don't want to simply buy your technology, Mr. Chen, you explained to Altair's CEO, a brilliant but cautious engineer. We want to empower your vision. We believe in the future you're building, and we want to provide the foundation for it to truly flourish. Our goal isn't just a return on investment, it's a return on impact. You worked with your design team to craft a presentation that was not just informative, but subtly dominant. It highlighted Phoenix Holdings' unparalleled success, its ethical framework, and its visionary projects, implicitly positioning Maxwell Industries as the supplicant, not the equal partner. Every slide, every data point was chosen to emphasize your company's strength and independence, subtly reminding them of what they stood to gain and what they might lose if they underestimated you. This sincerity, combined with your shrewd business acumen, won them over. The Altair partnership was finalized with a flourish, making headlines across the industry. It was a clean, positive story, showcasing Phoenix Holdings not just as a financial powerhouse, but as a forward-thinking entity committed to innovation and sustainability. It sent a clear message to the market: Phoenix Holdings, under your leadership, was a force to be reckoned with, and you were playing a different game than your competitors. This move solidified your reputation as a visionary leader, distinct from the old guard titans like Leo's father. An obscure detail about psychological warfare in high-stakes negotiations, sometimes seen in historical diplomatic maneuvers, is that establishing early dominance through subtle acts of inconvenience or demands that invert the typical power dynamic can psychologically unbalance an opponent, making them more susceptible to subsequent proposals. By making Leo travel to you, and by forcing him to wait, you were already subtly asserting your superior position, a silent declaration of power that preceded any actual negotiation. It's like making your rival walk uphill in the snow, both ways, just to shake your hand. A common business truth is that in high-stakes corporate environments, strategic partnerships that genuinely leverage the strengths of both parties often yield more sustainable and innovative growth than aggressive, top-down acquisitions. This approach not only fosters collaboration, but also protects the unique intellectual capital and creative spirit of smaller, innovative companies, something larger conglomerates frequently fail to do. Your move with Altair wasn't just smart, it was a masterclass in modern corporate strategy. It was like swapping a sledgehammer for a scalpel, achieving a far more precise and effective result. You chose your outfit for the meeting with meticulous care, not a power suit that screamed aggression, but one that exuded quiet authority, confidence, and a touch of understated elegance. A deep sapphire blue, tailored perfectly, with minimal accessories. Your hair would be pulled back, revealing your sharp features. Your makeup would be subtle, enhancing your piercing gaze. You wanted to be memorable, formidable, but not overtly hostile. You wanted him to see you, truly see you, and then to reel from the realization. While these major deals were unfolding, you also meticulously reviewed Phoenix Holdings' existing portfolio. You identified underperforming assets and divested them, streamlining operations and freeing up capital for more promising ventures. You championed internal initiatives focused on talent development, fostering a culture of meritocracy and innovation within the company. Employees, initially wary of the new, mysterious heiress, quickly grew to respect and admire your clear vision, decisive action, and genuine care for the company's long-term health. You weren't just a figurehead, you were an active, engaged leader. You anticipated Leo's reaction, shock, disbelief, perhaps even a flicker of the regret you craved, but you couldn't allow that to sway you. You had spent 5 years building this new self, cementing your emotional fortress. This wasn't about him. Not anymore. It was about you. It was about justice, about proving your worth, about demonstrating that true power lay not in inherited status or clever deception, but in integrity, resilience, and hard-earned intelligence. Your daily routine was grueling but exhilarating. You were up before dawn, poring over reports, engaging in virtual meetings with teams across different time zones, and making critical decisions that shaped the company's future. The sharp, calculating mind you had honed in your years of exile was now fully unleashed, guiding Phoenix Holdings with unwavering precision. You thrived on the challenge, on the intellectual sparring, on the tangible impact you were making. Every success felt like another brick in the formidable empire you were building. An empire entirely your own. You rehearsed your initial greeting, your responses to anticipated questions, even your facial expressions. You would maintain a cool, professional demeanor, treating Leo Maxwell as just another potential business partner, no more, no less. There would be no overt signs of recognition, no flicker of emotion in your eyes. You would be A.R. Sterling, the formidable heiress, the CEO of Phoenix Holdings, a force entirely independent of her painful past. Amidst this relentless professional drive, the situation with Leo Maxwell continued to evolve. After your confession in the gallery, he seemed to have entered a period of intense self-reflection. His public apologies and internal reforms at Maxwell Industries were genuine. If a little slow-moving, he fired key executives who had sided with Eliza or failed in their duties, restructured departments, and even initiated a public relations campaign focused on transparency and ethical rebuilding. He was trying to change, truly change, not just for the company, but for himself. A common academic debate among psychologists and negotiation experts is whether maintaining a completely emotionless facade in high-stakes interactions is truly beneficial, or if allowing subtle site-controlled expressions of emotion can sometimes be more effective in building rapport or influencing outcomes. For you, however, the choice was clear. Emotions had been your undoing once. Now, they were a luxury you could not afford to display, at least not until you had achieved your objective. You wonder if, deep down, the act of suppressing so much emotion would ever truly make you feel free. He stopped sending the white roses, understanding your need for space. Instead, he would occasionally send a single, brief email to your personal, highly secure address, always professional in tone, often related to industry news, or a brief, respectful query about a market trend. You would reply equally professionally, maintaining a careful distance. This shift in communication was a subtle but significant sign of his growing respect for your boundaries and your new identity. He wasn't chasing a lover, he was cautiously approaching a formidable peer. The night before the scheduled meeting, you stood by your window, looking out at the glittering lights of Zurich. The city hummed with a quiet, efficient energy, a stark contrast to the chaotic, vibrant energy of the city you had fled 5 years ago. You thought of Leo, of Eliza, of the life you had believed was yours. There was no anger now, only a quiet, resolute calm. You were no longer the heartbroken girl. You were the phoenix, risen from the ashes, stronger and more beautiful than before. An obscure detail in behavioral psychology suggests that true behavioral change in individuals who have made significant errors often manifests not through grand gestures, but through consistent, often quiet, shifts in communication, respect for boundaries, and a focus on self-improvement rather than immediate reconciliation. Leo's change in approach was a more genuine indicator of growth than any desperate plea could have been. It was like observing a subtle shift in the wind, indicating a deeper change in the weather pattern. You knew this was just the beginning. The boardroom collision would be intense, emotionally charged for one side, perhaps, but for you, it would be a meticulously executed strategic maneuver. You weren't seeking to destroy Leo Maxwell. Not entirely. You sought to humble him, to force him to confront the consequences of his actions, to realize the profound error he had made in underestimating you. And in doing so, you would secure your own legacy, solidifying Phoenix Holdings' position as a global powerhouse built on principles of integrity and innovation. The stage was set, the curtain was about to rise, and you, A.R. Sterling, were ready to play your part. Your focus, however, remained firmly on Phoenix Holdings. The company was flourishing. Within months, its stock price had soared, surpassing all analyst expectations. Your strategic partnerships, particularly the one with Altair Innovations, had positioned Phoenix Holdings at the forefront of the green energy revolution, attracting even more investors and talent. Competitors began to eye your moves with a mixture of admiration and trepidation. You had transformed the company, and in doing so, had transformed the industry landscape. The boardroom at Maxwell Industries' Zurich headquarters was a symphony of polished mahogany, frosted glass, and hushed anticipation. You stepped into the opulent space, your steps measured, your posture radiating an almost regal confidence. The air was thick with the scent of expensive coffee and the unspoken weight of billions of dollars. Your team, Julian Vance and 2 other senior executives, followed a step behind you, their faces as composed and unreadable as your own. You caught a glimpse of yourself in the reflective surface of the large, central conference table. A.R. Sterling, a formidable figure in sapphire blue, every inch the titan of industry. You were invited to speak at major economic forums and global sustainability summits. Your insights were sought after, your opinions valued. The media, which had once sensationalized your past, now hailed you as a brilliant, enigmatic CEO, a rising star who had carved her own path. You handled the attention with grace and composure, never losing sight of your objectives. The spotlight didn't consume you, you commanded it. Across the sprawling table, Leo Maxwell stood, flanked by his own team, his chief financial officer, a stern-faced man named Mr. Harrington, and his head of acquisitions, a slick, overconfident woman named Ms. Davies, were at his side. And then there was her, Eliza Thornton. She stood slightly behind Leo, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer suit a stark contrast to the subtle elegance of your own attire. Her smile, once a weapon of subtle dismissal, now seemed frozen, a desperate attempt at nonchalance. Her eyes, however, betrayed her. They were wide, darting, and filled with a flicker of recognition, then disbelief, and finally, a chilling undercurrent of fear. There was a profound satisfaction in this professional triumph. It was more than just money, it was validation. It was the undeniable proof that the vulnerable, discarded intern was gone, replaced by a woman of immense capability and unshakable resolve. Every successful deal, every positive quarterly report, every industry award was a quiet shout against the whispers of your past, a testament to your resilience. Leo, however, was slower to grasp the truth. As you entered, his gaze swept over your team, then landed on you. There was a polite, professional smile on his face, the kind he reserved for important business dignitaries. It was the same smile he used for donors at charity galas. For investors, he needed to impress. For everyone and no one. He extended a hand. One evening, you found yourself in your private office, looking out at the city lights. Julian entered quietly, placing a new report on your desk. Ms. Sterling, welcome to Maxwell Industries. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. His voice was smooth, confident, utterly devoid of recognition. He saw a powerful woman, a formidable CEO, but not you, not Arya. Ms. Sterling, he began, his voice calm. Maxwell Industries has just released their Q3 earnings report. It's a marked improvement. Mr. Maxwell's restructuring efforts appear to be gaining traction. You took his hand, your grip firm, your touch cool and steady. You met his eyes directly, allowing no flicker of emotion to betray the storm within you. You held his gaze for a beat longer than strictly necessary, searching for any spark of remembrance, any hint that the man who once knew every curve of your hand, every secret whisper of your heart, might see through your carefully constructed facade. Nothing, just polite, professional interest. It was both a triumph and a strange, hollow ache. He truly hadn't seen you coming. You picked up the report, scanning the figures. Leo had indeed turned the ship around. Albeit slowly, he was proving himself capable, resilient in his own right. The damage from the failed merger and Eliza's scandal was still evident, but he was mitigating it, showing a leadership strength that had perhaps been dormant under his father's shadow and Eliza's influence. Mr. Maxwell, you replied, your voice a low, calm alto, carefully modulated to remove any trace of the past. The pleasure is all Phoenix Holdings. Good, you simply stated, closing the report. Competition keeps us sharp. His eyes, once so familiar, were still beautiful, framed by lashes you used to trace with your fingertips. His jawline was as sharp as ever, and the faint scent of his expensive cologne, a scent that used to lull you to sleep, now felt like a cruel irony. He released your hand, and for a fleeting second, you wondered if he felt the ghost of a tremor, a distant echo of 5 years ago. But he merely gestured to the table. Julian gave a rare, almost imperceptible smile. Indeed. And your new venture in the Asia-Pacific market, the one with Solar Edge, it's projected to be even more profitable than the Altair partnership. Please have a seat, Eliza, Ms. Davies, Mr. Harrington. This is Ms. A.R. Sterling, CEO of Phoenix Holdings, and her esteemed team. Excellent, you replied, leaning back in your chair. The world was your oyster, and you were carving out your own pearls. You had built this brick by brick, decision by decision. The inherited wealth had been a launchpad, but your vision and execution had propelled Phoenix Holdings to new heights. Eliza stepped forward, her smile widening unnaturally. Ms. Sterling, it's an honor. We've heard so much about Phoenix Holdings' incredible growth. Her voice was syrupy, laced with a false cordiality. But as her eyes met yours, a jolt of pure, unadulterated shock visibly hit her. Her perfectly composed features faltered. Her lips parted slightly, and for a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. She saw you. She knew. A common academic debate among economists and business historians questions whether corporate success in the modern era is more attributable to individual genius or the broader economic and technological forces at play. While external factors certainly provided opportunities, Arya's specific strategic choices, her ethical stance, and her ability to execute large-scale, complex initiatives were undeniably the driving forces behind Phoenix Holdings' rapid ascent. It was like a skilled sailor catching a favorable wind. The wind was there, but it took immense talent to navigate the ship so effectively. You gave her a polite, almost imperceptible nod, your expression unchanging. Her gasp was swallowed by the sudden scraping of chairs as everyone took their seats. Leo, still oblivious, sat opposite you, a confident, predatory gleam in his eyes as he prepared to open the negotiations. He had no idea the predator was sitting directly across from him. This was going to be better than you ever imagined. You had proven your worth, not just to yourself, but to the entire world. The sting of betrayal had fueled your initial transformation, but your sustained success was now driven by a deeper purpose, the desire to build something truly impactful, something that reflected your values. The heiress had risen, not just to a title, but to a formidable force in her own right. You were no longer defined by your past as a secret lover, nor merely by your inherited wealth. You were Arya, A.R. Sterling, the visionary CEO, and the true empire you were building was one of influence, integrity, and unparalleled success. The professional triumph was complete, laying the groundwork for whatever the future, personal or otherwise, might hold. As the meeting began, Leo launched into his prepared spiel, a polished overview of Maxwell Industries' strengths, their market position, and the undeniable synergy he envisioned with Phoenix Holdings. He spoke of innovation, of future markets, of shared visions. He was good, undeniably so. He commanded the room with his presence, his charisma, the very qualities that had once drawn you in. With Phoenix Holdings firmly established as a titan in the global market, your professional life, Arya, had reached a pinnacle of success and fulfillment. You commanded respect, your decisions shaped industries, and the empire you had built stood as an undeniable monument to your resilience and intellect. The external conflicts, Eliza's downfall. Leo's corporate recovery had largely resolved, leaving you with a sense of quiet triumph. But as the external storms subsided, an internal one began to brew, a tempest of emotions centered on the most pivotal choice of your life, your future, and whether that future included Leo Maxwell. You listened intently, your face a canvas of polite attention, but beneath the surface, your mind was a whirlwind of strategic calculations, filtering his every word through the lens of your intimate past knowledge. When he spoke of Maxwell Industries' ambitious AI development, you recalled hushed conversations in the dark about a specific, costly setback in their R&D department, a detail he was now conveniently omitting. When he boasted about their robust energy portfolio, you remembered his frustration about a recent regulatory hurdle for a key offshore wind project, a hurdle that could delay profitability for years. The daily emails from Leo had shifted subtly once more. They were still professional, often sharing insights on market trends or discussing philanthropic initiatives. But now, a delicate thread of personal warmth occasionally wove through them. He would commend a Phoenix Holdings achievement with a genuine tone, or perhaps reference a shared memory of a business concept you discussed years ago, a subtle acknowledgement of the intellectual connection that had always existed between you. He never pressured, never demanded, but his presence, respectful and persistent, was a constant, gentle hum in the background of your life. Then it was your turn. You began your presentation, your voice calm and authoritative, your words precise. You didn't just present Phoenix Holdings' strengths, you subtly, expertly, highlighted Maxwell Industries' weaknesses, not in an accusatory way, but as factors to be carefully considered in any potential partnership. You spoke of your unique, proprietary solutions to the very challenges Leo was glossing over, demonstrating that Phoenix Holdings didn't just complement Maxwell Industries, it could fill their strategic voids. You found yourself analyzing his communications with the same meticulousness you applied to a complex merger document. Each word, each phrasing was weighed. Was this true change? Or was it simply the refined charm of a man who knew how to get what he wanted? Your mind, accustomed to skepticism and strategic thought, warred with a heart that remembered the depth of connection you once shared, and the raw vulnerability he had shown in the gallery. You introduced a slide detailing Phoenix Holdings' unprecedented success in navigating complex international regulatory landscapes for renewable energy projects, a direct jab at Maxwell Industries' stalled offshore wind venture. You casually mentioned the synergistic potential of your AI division's advanced predictive modeling, which could significantly optimize R&D efficiency, a subtle nod to their internal struggles. Each point was a surgical strike, delivered with polite smiles and professional courtesy. A common psychological truth, often observed in dynamics of forgiveness, is that the human mind, when healing from deep betrayal, often oscillates between a desire for complete closure and a longing for restored connection, creating a turbulent internal landscape. This oscillation is not a sign of weakness, but a natural part of processing complex trauma, as the individual tries to integrate the past pain with the possibility of future peace. You are caught in this very oscillation, a pendulum swinging between fierce independence and a hesitant pull towards a past that promised a different, perhaps gentler, future. It was like trying to navigate a ship through both a calm sea and a hidden undertow at the same time. Leo's initial confidence began to waver. He shifted in his seat, his brow furrowed. He exchanged quick glances with Mr. Harrington, who looked increasingly uneasy. Eliza, meanwhile, sat rigid, her eyes fixed on you, a growing horror in their depths. She knew what this meant. She knew you weren't just a business rival, you were a ghost from a past she thought she had buried, now re-emerging with unimaginable power. One evening, while reviewing financial reports, you paused. Julian, as always, was discreetly attending to his own tasks in the adjacent office. You thought about the sheer volume of work, the endless stream of decisions, the constant vigilance required to maintain your position. You loved it, truly. It was your creation, your testament. But was it all? Was there space for something else? Something beyond the relentless pursuit of corporate dominance? A common historical truth in business and political negotiations is that the party with superior, often concealed, information about the other's vulnerabilities holds a significant, almost insurmountable, advantage. This was a tactic employed by Machiavellian princes and modern corporate raiders alike. You had, through painful personal experience and 5 years of meticulous study, acquired the ultimate intel, transforming the negotiation from a fair fight into a strategically one-sided masterclass. It was like playing chess against someone who unknowingly revealed their entire strategy manual to you years ago. You recalled the days with Leo, the late-night conversations in his penthouse, the shared laughter over silly things, the way he'd look at you, as if you were the only person in the world. It had been a dangerous, precarious love, shrouded in secrecy, but undeniably potent. You had been naive, yes, but you had also been deeply, profoundly happy, even if fleetingly. Could that happiness exist without the pain that came with it? Could he, after all this, truly be different? During a break, as coffee and pastries were quietly served, Leo approached you. "Ms. Sterling," he began, his voice lower, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. "Your insights are impressive. You seem to have an unusually detailed understanding of our internal operations. You decided to take a short, unexpected break, something you hadn't done in years. You flew to a secluded villa in the Italian countryside, a place with rolling hills, ancient olive groves, and the scent of jasmine heavy in the air." Julian, after ensuring all critical operations were covered, simply nodded. He understood. You met his gaze, a cool, enigmatic smile on your lips. "Mr. Maxwell, Phoenix Holdings prides itself on thorough due diligence. We believe in understanding every aspect of a potential partnership, both its strengths and its areas for growth." You let the implication hang in the air. It's simply good business practice. There, away from the concrete canyons of finance, away from the demands of Phoenix Holdings, you allowed yourself to simply be. You walked through vineyards, read by an ancient stone fountain, and watched the sunsets paint the sky in hues of orange and violet. It was in this quiet solitude that the internal conflict became clearer, less muddled by the distractions of power and ambition. He studied your face, his eyes searching, a flicker of something resembling confusion, then a dawning realization, slowly spreading across his features. His confident posture began to sag, his shoulders subtly slumping. His eyes, fixed on yours, widened fractionally. The smile vanished. The recognition was finally hitting him, a slow, burning realization that was far more satisfying than immediate shock. The air around him seemed to thicken, suddenly charged with unspoken questions. He was finally starting to see. You thought about the nature of choice. 5 years ago, your life had been chosen for you by Eliza's machinations and Leo's complacency. You had reacted, rebuilt, and triumphed. Now, for the first time in a very long time, you had the profound freedom to choose. Not just choose a path, but choose who you would become, unfettered by anyone else's expectations or betrayals. This was true agency. An obscure detail about human memory and recognition, especially under stress, is that while initial perception might filter out familiar cues in unfamiliar contexts, prolonged exposure and the presence of increasingly strong, contextual triggers like your specific knowledge of his company can force a dramatic breakthrough of repressed or overlooked memories, leading to a profound, often disorienting, moment of realization. Leo wasn't just recognizing a face, he was recognizing a presence, a history, a soul he thought he had extinguished. It's like seeing an old photo, but only after someone points out every single detail you'd forgotten. One day, as you sat sketching in a small notebook, a memory surfaced, a fleeting moment when Leo had once confessed his deepest fear wasn't failure, but becoming like his emotionally distant, controlling father. He had yearned for a life different from the one meticulously planned for him. This detail, almost forgotten, brought a new layer of understanding to his past actions. He hadn't just been a coward, he had been a man trapped, desperately trying to prove himself worthy of an empire while simultaneously yearning for freedom from its suffocating grasp. The second half of the meeting began, and Leo was noticeably different. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a tense, distracted energy. He fumbled a few times with his notes. His responses were less fluid, and he kept glancing at you. His eyes narrowed, scrutinizing, as if trying to piece together a puzzle whose key piece was sitting right in front of him. Eliza, meanwhile, seemed to shrink in her seat, her face pale, her gaze fixed on the table, as if wishing the polished surface would swallow her whole. An obscure detail from Roman history, often overlooked, is that even the most powerful Roman emperors, despite their absolute authority, frequently experienced immense personal and political pressures from their inner circles and the expectations of their legacy, leading them to make choices that seemed callous but were driven by a complex web of influence. Leo, in a modern context, had been similarly ensnared, a truth that didn't absolve him, but certainly explained his previously inexplicable behavior. It was like finding a missing piece of a puzzle, making the whole picture finally make sense. You continued your strategic assault, each point you made further eroding his composure. You expertly steered the conversation towards the very weaknesses you knew would make Maxwell Industries vulnerable, subtly hinting at alternative solutions that only Phoenix Holdings could provide. You presented a detailed analysis of market trends that directly challenged Maxwell Industries' current expansion strategy, implying that their trajectory, without your intervention, was unsustainable. You knew, deep down, that you could choose a path of complete independence. You could continue to expand Phoenix Holdings, becoming an even more formidable figure in global finance. You could build a legacy that was entirely your own, free from the complexities of a past love. It was a clear, unencumbered path, filled with professional triumph and self-sufficiency. This path promised complete emotional safety, a fortress built around your heart. You were perfectly capable of thriving on this path. Of course, you concluded, your voice soft but firm. Any true partnership must be built on transparency and a complete understanding of all assets and liabilities. Phoenix Holdings values integrity above all else. We believe in forging alliances that are mutually beneficial, where both parties contribute their unique strengths to create something truly exceptional. We are not interested in merely patching over existing vulnerabilities, but in building a future that is robust and sustainable for all stakeholders. But was it enough as you gazed at the ancient gnarled olive trees, symbols of resilience and deep roots? You wondered if true fulfillment lay solely in professional success, or if it also required a different kind of growth, one that embraced vulnerability and the messiness of human connection. It was a thinly veiled dig, a subtle accusation of his past lack of transparency, his casual disregard for the liabilities he created. You watched his face, the slow dawning of comprehension, the almost imperceptible tremor in his jaw. He knew. He finally knew. The boardroom, once a stage for his dominance, had become an arena where he was being systematically, elegantly dismantled. Then, a thought occurred to you, a quiet chuckle escaping your lips. You know, if I don't figure this out soon, I'm going to have to write a business plan for my love life. Step 1, identify key stakeholders. Step 2, SWOT analysis of emotional risks. Step 3, ROI on potential heartbreak. It's almost too easy, isn't it? The absurdity of applying corporate strategy to matters of the heart momentarily lightened the heavy load. You leaned forward slightly, a faint, almost pitying smile on your lips. "Mr. Maxwell," you said, your voice just loud enough to carry across the hushed room. "I believe we have given you much to consider. We await your revised proposal, one that reflects a more comprehensive understanding of the current landscape. Our team will be available for further discussions once you are ready." The academic debate about whether enduring emotional pain is a necessary component of profound personal growth, or if growth can be achieved through less traumatic means, resonated deeply within you. Your transformation had certainly been born from trauma, but your continued growth was now a conscious choice. Could you grow further by letting go of the anger and embracing a new, albeit risky, form of connection? Or was true strength found in maintaining a protective distance? You stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Julian and your team rose smoothly, ready to follow your lead. Leo, however, remained seated for a beat too long, his eyes wide, fixed on your retreating figure. The grand, charismatic CEO looked utterly, profoundly stunned. You remembered another lighthearted moment from your past life, a silly internal joke you had with yourself about Leo's endless supply of designer socks. He probably has a sock butler. You know, someone whose sole purpose is to organize his socks by color, material, and astrological sign. Even amidst the grand drama, a flicker of that old, easy familiarity remained. As you walked out of the boardroom, you resisted the urge to look back. The air outside felt lighter, cleaner. You had made your entrance. You had delivered your message. And the first battle, a battle of wits and wills, had been decisively won. The journey had been long, the pain deep. But standing there, bathed in the cool Zurich light, you felt a surge of empowerment that was more potent than any revenge. This wasn't just about winning a merger. It was about reclaiming your power, your identity, and your place in a world that had once tried to erase you. And this was just the beginning of the true reckoning. You began to understand that Leo's confession, his sustained remorse, and his efforts to change were not about getting you back as the secret lover. It was about seeking redemption for his past blindness, and perhaps offering a more mature, equitable connection. He had, in his own way, been transformed by the consequences of his actions. He was no longer the man who had dismissed you as a distraction. He was a man humbled, who had finally learned the true cost of his choices. The air in the sterile, high-ceilinged corridor of Maxwell Industries felt colder than it should have as you exited the boardroom. Behind you, you knew, Leo Maxwell was grappling with a recognition that had just hit him like a physical blow. Eliza Thornton, his fiancée, would be in a state of barely contained panic. The strategic silence you had maintained for 5 years had amplified this moment, turning a simple business meeting into a dramatic unveiling. But your work, you knew, was far from over. This was merely the first volley. You closed your eyes, feeling the gentle breeze on your face. You had the power to forgive, but forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, nor did it mean immediate reconciliation. It meant releasing the burden of anger, acknowledging the truth, and deciding if a new chapter, built on a different foundation, was possible. You had proven your independence, built your empire. Now, the question was not whether you could survive without him, but whether you wanted to live a life that might potentially include him, but on entirely your own terms. Back in your private suite at the Dolder Grand, the luxurious hotel offering panoramic views of Zurich, you allowed yourself a brief moment of quiet satisfaction. Julian Vance, ever the stoic, offered a rare, approving nod. "A masterclass, Ms. Sterling," he commented as he began packing up his own brief. Mr. Maxwell was visibly unsettled, and Ms. Thornton, she looked as if she'd seen a ghost. The ultimate joke, perhaps, was that after fighting so hard to reclaim your power, the hardest choice was not about business, but about the heart. Who knew being a ridiculously rich heiress would still involve so much agonizing over boys? I thought that phase ended with high school. Clearly, the universe has a twisted sense of humor. A wry smile touched your lips. A ghost with a formidable balance sheet, you murmured. A faint, humorless smile touching your lips. They underestimated Phoenix Holdings, Julian, and they underestimated me. You weighed the options: a life of absolute, unencumbered independence, professional triumph, and emotional solitude, or a life that, while still fiercely independent, allowed for the possibility of a renewed connection, one that was no longer clandestine, no longer based on secrets and power imbalances, but on mutual respect, honesty, and perhaps a deeper love forged in the fires of shared pain and profound understanding. You knew Leo wouldn't let this go. The man you knew was driven, persistent, and deeply proud. His recognition of you, delayed though it was, would ignite a furious need to understand. To confront, you expected a call, an email, something that would try to breach the professional wall you had so meticulously erected. And you were ready. The idea of forging a new legacy entirely on your own terms was appealing. You had done it once, you could continue, but the thought of a life shared, a life where the formidable A.R. Sterling could also be Aria, the woman who loved and was loved, held a different kind of allure. It was a risk, certainly, but you were no stranger to risks. The first attempt came that very evening. A discreet message forwarded from your assistant. Mr. Leo Maxwell requests a private, informal discussion regarding the preliminary merger talks. He suggests dinner. You realize that the choice wasn't between weakness and strength. It was a choice between two different kinds of strength. The strength to stand alone and the strength to rebuild, to open your heart again, but on your own conditions. The old Aria, the secret lover, would have chased Leo, desperate for his affection. The new Aria, the heiress, now had the power to invite him, or not, into a future she solely defined. You dismissed it with a curt decline, state that all discussions will occur within formal business parameters. You added, and inform him that my schedule for informal meetings is entirely booked for the foreseeable future. The message was clear. You dictated the terms now. No more clandestine dinners, no more whispered promises in the dark. This choice was yours, and yours alone. It defined not just your relationship with Leo, but your ultimate journey of self-discovery and agency. It was the final, most profound step in becoming truly whole, deciding whether the scars of the past would forever dictate the boundaries of your heart, or if they could become a testament to its enduring capacity for hope and renewed connection. The path was uncertain, but the choice, and finally, was entirely, beautifully, terrifyingly yours. Over the next few days, the business negotiations continued, albeit with a palpable shift in dynamics. Leo was no longer the confident, composed CEO. His focus was fractured. During subsequent video conferences, his eyes would constantly drift to your face, searching, dissecting, trying to reconcile the formidable A.R. Sterling with the vulnerable Aria he thought he knew. He'd occasionally stumble over a point or offer a vague answer, clearly distracted by the overwhelming presence of your return. The Italian countryside, with its ancient wisdom etched into every olive tree and sun-drenched stone, had offered you, Aria, the clarity you sought. You returned to Zurich not with a definitive answer for Leo Maxwell, but with a profound understanding of yourself and the kind of future you truly desired. The decision was no longer about forgiving him, but about whether his presence aligned with the independent, powerful, and whole woman you had become. You, however, remained a picture of professional detachment. You discussed market shares, quarterly reports, and projected synergies with a cool, analytical precision that left no room for sentiment. Every detail you presented about Phoenix Holdings was designed to highlight its robust health and ethical backbone, implicitly contrasting it with Maxwell Industries' more aggressive, often less transparent, strategies. You decided to meet him, not in a clandestine manner, nor in the opulent, intimidating setting of a corporate office, but in a neutral, quiet cafe he used to frequent during his university days, a place devoid of pretense and power dynamics. He arrived promptly, looking thinner, perhaps a little older, but with a new depth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was no longer the arrogant, conflicted CEO. He was simply Leo. You utilized your intimate past knowledge of Leo to devastating effect. For example, When he proposed a seemingly innovative but ultimately high-risk expansion into a volatile emerging market, you immediately recalled his tendency to chase ambitious, flashy projects that sometimes overlooked underlying financial instabilities. You countered with Phoenix Holdings' established, long-term investments in stable, diversified global portfolios, subtly highlighting the prudence he often lacked. You spoke for hours, sipping coffee that grew cold. You didn't rehash the past in anger, but in understanding. You explained the depth of your pain, the humiliation, and the sheer effort it had taken to rebuild your life. He listened, truly listened, without interruption, his gaze steady and filled with remorse. He confessed the suffocating pressure from his father, the fear of losing everything, and how Eliza had masterfully exploited his weaknesses. He owned his complicity, his cowardice, not as an excuse, but as a painful truth he had finally confronted. "Mr. Maxwell," you stated calmly during one negotiation, "while your proposed venture into the Valerius region shows commendable ambition, Phoenix Holdings prioritizes sustainable growth over speculative gains. Our data indicates a significant political instability risk there, which could severely impact long-term ROI. Perhaps a more phased approach, with stronger local partnerships, would mitigate that." You remembered him once dismissing such caution as weakness. Now, it was your strength. "I know I don't deserve another chance, Arya," he said, his voice raw, "but I want you to know, the man who let you go that day, he's gone. You made sure of that. And the man who's here now, he sees you, all of you, not as a distraction, not as a secret, but as the extraordinary woman you are." He spoke of his own journey of self-reflection, the therapy, the conscious effort to break free from his father's oppressive influence and his own past mistakes. He wasn't begging, he was acknowledging. He visibly flinched, his jaw tightening. "Our intelligence suggests the risks are manageable, Ms. Sterling," he retorted, but his voice lacked conviction. He knew you were right, because he had probably made similar observations in the past, only to be swayed by his own hubris or the pressure from his board. You had always been the quiet, rational voice he sometimes ignored. Now, that voice had an army of analysts and billions of dollars behind it. A common psychological theory on relationships, especially after significant breaches of trust, posits that true reconciliation isn't about erasing the past, but about building a new relationship atop the foundation of acknowledged and healed wounds. It requires both parties to evolve, and the willingness to see each other not just for who they were, but for who they have become through the crucible of their experiences. This was the space you and Leo were cautiously entering, a testament to growth from both sides. It was like seeing two broken pieces of a vase, not merely glued together, but fused with gold, making something even more beautiful and resilient. Eliza, meanwhile, was a constant, unsettling presence. She rarely spoke, but her gaze was a hot, resentful brand on your skin. You could feel her seething fury, her desperate need to understand how you had returned, and how you had become so powerful. She even attempted a private conversation, cornering you in the hallway outside a meeting. You didn't offer immediate forgiveness, not verbally. Instead, you offered something more profound, a cautious openness. "Leo," you said, your voice steady, "what happened broke me, but it also made me. I built an empire because I had to. I don't need anyone to complete me. But I'm willing to see if we can build something new, something different, something based on honesty, respect, and equals." "Arya!" she hissed, her voice low, laced with a venom she barely contained. "What do you think you're doing? Why are you back?" He simply nodded, understanding. There was no desperate embrace, no declarations of undying love. There was a quiet, mutual acknowledgement of the immense journey they had both undertaken, separately, to arrive at this fragile, hopeful crossroads. You simply turned, your eyes cold, piercing through her false composure. "You have me mistaken for someone else," you stated, your voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I am A.R. Sterling, and I am here to conduct business. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a call awaiting." You walked past her, leaving her fuming and speechless in your wake. Her desperate attempt to rattle you had failed spectacularly. It was like trying to scare a dragon with a water pistol. Over the next few months, Your relationship with Leo began to tentatively rebuild. It was slow, deliberate, and entirely public. You were seen together at industry events, at charity galas, and occasionally grabbing coffee, no longer hiding, no longer ashamed. He respected your boundaries fiercely, never overstepping, always ensuring you felt secure and empowered. He met your demands for transparency, not just in business, but in his personal life, too. He was learning to be vulnerable, to truly communicate, a transformation that surprised many, including himself. A common historical truth about power dynamics is that when a previously subordinate or vulnerable individual suddenly acquires significant power, former oppressors often react with a mixture of disbelief, fear, and a desperate attempt to reassert dominance, often through personal attacks or emotional manipulation. This dynamic played out in ancient courts and modern corporations, as those accustomed to privilege struggled to accept the changed reality. Eliza's reaction was a classic example of this historical pattern. Her venom, a direct symptom of her slipping control. Their dynamic had fundamentally shifted. He wasn't the powerful CEO dictating terms to his secret lover. He was a peer, a formidable business rival who was also a man trying to earn back your trust. You found joy in the intellectual sparring, the shared ambition, and the deep understanding that had always existed between your minds. The old passions, rekindled slowly, were now tempered with a newfound respect and an unshakable foundation of honesty. Leo, however, tried a different approach. He began sending more subtle, almost nostalgic, messages. A digital copy of an article about a small, independent coffee shop you both used to frequent, an anonymous, elaborate floral arrangement delivered to your hotel suite, with a card that simply read, Zurich, unlike our old city, feels colder. He was testing the waters, trying to find a crack in your armor, a sign that the old aria was still beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Eliza Thornton's fate served as a stark, public reminder that justice, though sometimes slow, often finds its way to those who seek to manipulate and destroy. Her legal battles consumed her remaining wealth, her family. After a brief, performative show of support, effectively disowned her to protect their own reputations. She vanished from the social scene, her name synonymous with deceit and corporate scandal, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. Her retribution was complete and irreversible. You ignored them all. The coffee shop article was deleted. The flowers were politely sent to the hotel staff. You remained A.R. Sterling, the impenetrable heiress. Your refusal to engage in any personal dialogue only heightened his frustration, fueling his obsession to understand your transformation. You, Aria, focused on expanding Phoenix Holdings' legacy. The Altair Innovations partnership thrived, revolutionizing the renewable energy sector. You initiated major philanthropic ventures, establishing foundations focused on empowering women in business and providing educational opportunities for underprivileged youth. Your name became synonymous not just with wealth, but with integrity, vision, and social responsibility. You proved that immense power could be wielded for profound good. During one particularly tense negotiation, Maxwell Industries presented a complex legal document, a standard clause for intellectual property sharing that Leo knew you would find unfavorable. It was a subtle challenge, a test of your resolve. You remembered him mentioning this exact clause in a different context, years ago, boasting about how it locked in partners. Whether you eventually married Leo or chose a long-term partnership without the formal title, the ultimate outcome was one of profound happiness and fulfillment. If you married, it was on your terms, a union of equals, built on mutual respect and shared values, a testament to overcoming adversity. If you chose partnership, it was a deliberate decision to maintain your fierce independence while still cherishing a profound connection. The details of your personal life remained largely private, but the public saw a woman who radiated confidence, success, and a quiet, inner peace. Section 3.1.2. You stated, your gaze fixed on the offending paragraph, Phoenix Holdings cannot agree to these terms. Our proprietary AI algorithms are fundamental to our competitive advantage. We propose a tiered licensing agreement, with strict usage limitations and royalties that reflect the true value of our intellectual property. You even cited a specific, obscure legal precedent he once used as a case study, turning his own lessons against him. You discovered that true power wasn't just about accumulating wealth or dominating markets. It was about owning your story, healing your wounds, and forging a path that aligned with your deepest values. The girl who was once a secret lover, broken and discarded, had not only survived, but had thrived beyond imagination. She had reclaimed her narrative, rewritten her destiny, and built a legacy that was richer and more meaningful than any inheritance could ever be. You were Arya, the formidable heiress, the visionary CEO, but most importantly, you were a woman who had found her true worth, proving that resilience, self-worth, and the courage to forge your own destiny truly lead to an unparalleled life. He blinked, surprised by your immediate and precise counter. That's a rather aggressive stance, Ms. Sterling, he stammered, clearly taken aback. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more thrilling tales of redemption and unexpected twists, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps us bring more stories like this to life. Stay with us for the next one. And while you're here, check out our other videos. There's always more to explore. It is a protective stance. Mr. Maxwell, you corrected him. Your voice unwavering. Phoenix Holdings invests billions in R&D. We protect our innovations fiercely. This is non-negotiable. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from you. The negotiation team from Maxwell Industries looked at each other, stunned. They had expected a battle, but not such a swift, precise dismantling of their strategy. Leo, for his part, was caught between his professional need to secure the deal and his personal confusion. He was seeing a woman who spoke his language, who understood his playbook, and who was now using it to systematically outmaneuver him.